That's my gavel for today. Welcome everyone to the Committee on Higher Education. Today is Tuesday, February 27th. It's 1 p.m. Let me start with our announcements. This meeting is being streamed live on YouTube. In the unlikely event that we have to abruptly end this hearing due to technical difficulties, the committee will reconvene to discuss any outstanding business on March 1st, 3 p.m. in conference room 229, and the public notice will be posted on the legislature's website. Also, if we do not finish today by our 5 p.m. hard stop, we will reconvene on March 1st at 3 p.m. And a reminder, we have a 1-minute time limit per testifier today, and I will be reading a list of individuals who submitted written testimony for each measure. We apologize if the closed caption doesn't accurately transcribe the names. And if you're interested in reviewing the written testimony, you can go on the legislature's website and you will find a link on the status page for the measure. And before I actually get started, I did want to say a few comments. We do have 3 nominees today. We have 3 agendas, and I tried to time it so that people could not have to sit all through. Can't guarantee we're going to start and end on time for the following agendas, but we'll do our best. We have 2 new appointees and 1 reappointment, and all of them have been serving as interim regents since July of 2023. Let me also say that confirmation of boards and commission appointees and departmental appointees is a huge responsibility for the Senate, and as such, we do take it very seriously. This is the only time we get to review and determine the suitability of candidates for the positions they have been appointed to. This, and when there is a reappointment, is the only time we're able to hold appointees accountable based on performance, past and present, based on what was represented to us in the past, and in the case, especially in the case of reappointments. The committee certainly appreciates all of you who have taken the time to submit testimonies in support and in opposition. I have read almost all of them. Keep in mind that we do not base our final determination on the number of testimonies we've received. Let me also thank our nominees for applying to serve on the Board of Regents. We know that it's a non-paying job and sometimes a thankless one, but it is a very important role. Just to review the role of the regents, the Office of Board of Regents, the affairs of the University of Hawaii fall under the general management and control of the Board of Regents pursuant to Article 10, Hawaii State Constitution, and Chapter 304A, Hawaii Revised Statute. The board formulates policy and exercises control over the university through its executive officer, the university president. The board has exclusive jurisdiction over the internal structure, management, and operation of the university. The board's and duties and responsibilities. The board as a whole is responsible for the internal governance of the university. Implementation of Board of Regents policies is the responsibility of the president and executive managerial team. The Board of Regents' responsibilities, as specified in board bylaws and policies, generally relate to establishing the general mission and goals of the system and approving any changes to them, adopting academic and facilities planning documents for the system and the campuses, appointing and evaluating the president, establishing the administrative structure and approving major executive appointments, approving all major contractual obligations of the university, approving new academic and other programs and major organizational changes, reviewing all fiscal audits of the university operations, approving the university's budget, long-range financial plans, and budget requests for state funding. So that is quite a responsibility for the regents. Let me begin with GM 532, Lauren Akitaki, submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Regents of the University of Hawaii for a term to expire 6/30/2028. And we're going to start off first with testifiers, and then we'll invite the candidate up for remarks and questions. Okay. So in person For the confirmation for Lauren Akitaki, we have Marvin Dang in support. Marvin?
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members. Office of Marvin Dang stand in strong support of the nomination and confirmation, and we stand on our testimony.
Okay, thank you very much, Marvin. Ernie Wilson.
Ernie Wilson, Vice Chair, Chairman of the Board of Regents. I very strongly support the appointment of Lauren Akitaki as the other regent from Maui. In the short time that I've known,
You want to come sit down? I know you're here for all three, so. You might as well get comfortable.
so I say, in the short period of time, the 8 months that I've had the opportunity and the pleasure of serving with Lauren, found her to be, have tremendous interest as well as desire to really see the Board of Regents evolve into a much stronger role in terms of performance of its duties, and something that we need, moving forward in terms of meeting the demands of the future. Because, we don't live in the past. The world is changing very quickly, and we need people who can think forward and are not afraid to make statements that brings about the necessary change. So I strongly support her approval.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make one comment. I noticed in your testimony, you mentioned that they have been serving due to a delay in the hearing and confirmation process. So just want to put it on the record. The Senate didn't delay this. We got the names when we were off session in July. The names came down to us. We were out of session. And then the governor didn't send down the GMs to us until January 24th and 26th, respectively. So that's why we're hearing it. And normally the Senate tends to take up confirmations later in the session after crossover because it frees up our schedule time, hearing schedule. But due to the unsubstantive allegations that we will be using confirmation process to put pressure on the appointees regarding presidential search, we want to put this to rest because that is a false statement. And I don't know if there's anyone here that is putting any kind of pressure on any of the regents. I would like to know who they are. And so we will take this up and deal with it so that there can be no more allegations saying that we're trying to use the confirmation process to pressure any of the nominees in any way. So with that, thank you very much, Regent.
Thank you for clarifying that the process that I talked about that caused the delay.
Yes, thank you.
I wasn't pointing the finger at.
Okay. Just thought I'd take that
Governor's
opportunity to bring it up. Set the record straight, because the record is always not straight, especially in the media. Okay, Lauren Zerbel in Zoom, by Zoom.
Not present on Zoom, Chair.
Not present. Okay, I don't see her in here. Let's see, that is all that we have that testified in person. We have 109 in support and 0 in opposition. So I'm not going to read all the names of support and opposition like we normally do because of that. So I hope the nominee understands that. Anyone else in here wishing to testify on this nominee? Okay, not? Okay. All right. Lauren, if you would like to come forward. Oh, okay. I need to correct that if any outstanding business, instead of March 1st, it's February 29th, it's leap year. So it's Sadie Hawkins' year. So anybody wanting to do a proposal, women, this is our chance. We're not going to have another one until 4 years from now. Okay, to be serious, going back. Okay. Ms. Akitaki, would you like to start with a statement or opening remarks?
Yes, just briefly. Good afternoon, Chair Kim and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to appear before you. As I indicated in my questionnaire, it's been such an honor and a privilege to serve as an interim regent of the Board of Regents for the last 8 months. I also serve as the chair of the Audit Committee and the vice chair of the Institutional Success Committee. I've really enjoyed working with my fellow regents and the UH community. and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have for me.
Thank you. Members, we did send out the questionnaire to the nominees, and all of them have submitted it back. You have received copies of it, and it's been posted, and it's been sent out to members. And just a note that members are invited to attend confirmation, so if other members show up other than committee, don't be surprised. So with that, members, questions for Ms. Aki. Senator Fukunaga.
I thought it was so interesting that you spoke about your experiences on the audit committee. And I was particularly interested in hearing your thoughts on how you view the audit committee as something that can actually bring people together, build consensus, and be used as a tool for, broad-based improvements to the system. And specifically, you had referenced the two-track audit of the UH Manoa student housing issue. I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Thank you for that question. So when I came to, and Chair Alapaki Nahalea asked me to be chair of the audit committee, I was really honored because I bring my legal background and my background as a judge, but also as a social scientist. I have a master's degree in applied social research, focusing on quantitative issues. So when he asked me to be chair, I jumped into different articles about the audit function. And I realized there's this trend across the country wanting to look at the audit function as a positive, not as an attack. And I looked at what we currently had as audit topics and realized there was a tremendous opportunity to go in a slightly different direction. And so I was really thankful to my chair and fellow regents for seeing this vision. I put an article in the public materials about revisioning the audit function, and they've done this in other states. And we were able to start our first forward-looking audit. So it's a two-track audit of student housing. So one track is monitoring what the administration's doing, and the other track is gathering historical data and current data to assist the regents in looking forward. What would we like to see, looking at our current policy on student housing, and hopefully when that audit is completed, which should be in April, we can have a really robust discussion about where we would like to go and if we need any changes to our regent policy on student housing.
Oh, that sounds very encouraging. It's not too often you hear about audits in which you look forward as well as back. So thank you. Look forward to seeing the outcomes.
Just to follow up on that, you state in your questionnaire that it is my hope and priority to change the culture concerning audit topics and corrective actions and how corrective actions are viewed. So in light of that, I think a lot of people think that it's always negative, but it's also an opportunity to find some of the good things that might be going on as well, right?
Absolutely. The different audit topics, they are quite complicated, and a lot of work is done that is excellent that we don't know about. So when we get these reports, we're able to see all the different components of the topic that's being audited. And so that brings the good and areas for improvement to light.
Okay. So based on this culture, did you find a pushback when you started to recommend these audits and wanting to get more and get a tour of the student housing? Is there some kind of pushback or delays?
This is different than it's been done in the past. And so it's a culture shift. And I do feel that I've been appreciative of the board leadership and the administration in embracing my hope that we can go in a little bit of a different direction. I do understand that we have to have the core audit topics and the core audit function. I do not want to overwhelm our auditor and his staff. And so to incrementally bring in different audit topics that can be forward-looking as we are able to do so. And I was really appreciative of opening up the floor to the regions, all regions, to ask which audit topics they would like to see. And student housing was a topic suggested by another region.
So in the November 16th Board of Regents meeting, you raised concerns about that the board leadership has not set a firm date as to when this topic or the continuation of the student housing topic would be taken up. And you say that your understanding that the earliest this issue could be addressed again was at the Internal Audit Committee meeting presently scheduled for February, which would mean that the next time the board would allow to discuss student housing would be 3 months from now. Why does it take so long, and you need approval to put something on your agenda?
The board policy by the bylaws, and I actually have the specific sections, is that the chairs of each committee board policy by the bylaws and also the practice is that the chairs will suggest topics and ask for it to be put on the agenda. But the chair and the 2 vice chairs are in with the administration and the board staff in these agenda setting meetings weekly to decide the overall composition of what gets on the different agendas. And so that is the board policy. So this topic, student housing, did come up in audit, started back from my first meeting, August 3rd, second meeting, third meeting. And then we had requested KMH to present, and that presentation was moved to institutional success. So we did have it. It just, board leadership and administration, it made sense to be under institutional success. So now that's being tracked in institutional success. However, you are correct. November 16th, it was Vice Chair Wilson who moved to have student housing be reported on monthly. And so since the November 16th meeting, we have had monthly updates on student housing.
So is it your knowledge that the administration sits in on all the agenda planning?
Yes.
It's interesting because we don't have this administration tell us what to put on our agendas. So I'm just, okay, we can deal with that. So members, other questions? I do have others, but Senator Stelman?
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Akitaki, I just wanted to commend you on, at the Board of Regents Committee, your October 5th meeting, that you spoke up, that the committee chair had selected only males to be on the committee to choose the next president. So I just wanted to commend you for that at least you were on that committee. And we need a female voice also. So my second question is, how will you hold the president accountable for upholding the safety of the students? And I'm referring to the 2 instances of rape that occurred by the same perpetrator, to make sure that the student safety is looked at and that there's more concern in looking at it.
So there are different ways that instances of violence and unacceptable situations on campus are reported. As an attorney and as a judge, once those cases are filed, those would track differently through our general counsel. But you can be assured, given my background, that this is of utmost priority. And my interest in large part, in student housing is the health and safety of our students, particularly our female students. That cannot be compromised. And I do appreciate Chair Nahalea actually clarifying about are there any health and safety concerns? There's a lot of publicity over issues with student housing, but we have been told that health and safety is not where we're at here. But it is incredibly important to me that those issues are addressed. And I'm born and raised on Maui, so people come to me with all kinds of things regarding the University of Hawaii. And I early on, I had to decide that I am not going to brush off sort of things that aren't not quite in the purview of regents, but that I will do what I can to bring those issues forward if it's pointing them in the right direction or getting further involved. And this issue in particular is very important to me. Thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Just clarify, ultimately, everything at the UH comes under the board's purview, so just to know that. I just wanted to go back to something else you said in your questionnaire about the Warriors Recreational Center and the aquarium, Waikiki Aquarium audits that was outstanding, and
Yes.
it didn't have any deadlines? And how long was that outstanding?
Give me one moment.
You don't have to be exact, but
When I believe when the Warrior Rec Center, and I actually can be exact, but I won't take your time in doing that. So the Warrior Rec Center audit started in 2020. It was completed in 2021. It closed at the end of last year. My first audit meeting was August 3rd, 2023. And at that time, I had reviewed all the past minutes, and there was a statement that by the administration that it would be closed by the end of 2023. And we set that deadline. That was their own deadline mentioned in the minutes. So in my meeting, I just said that that would be our priority, that it needs to be closed by the end of last year, and it was closed by the end of last year. So I appreciate the Warrior Rec Center working to do that corrective action, and now it's closed. But it was open since it started in 2020. The report was completed in October of 2021.
because I specifically remember that because the way it was built, the rain would come in and it would go through the doors and it had soaked all of the floors, and the floors were all rotting and so forth out. And it was a design issue. And I don't know that we ever got funding or we got the contractor to fix it without paying. And then they had because students were calling me and they had all of the floorings in the gym or in that area for the longest time because they were going to replace the floors, and they didn't for the longest time replace the floors. And so I kept writing letters and asking the administration and the Board of Regents to deal with this. And so I'm just glad that it's finally closed. I don't know, we've never been privy to what was the findings, however, whether or not the contractor fixed it or UH had to pay additional monies to get all of that fixed.
There was one corrective action, and it was to do standalone finances, financial statements. And that was the one corrective action.
That was the
And
only
that was
corrective action.
done at the end of last year.
And the Waikiki
completed.
Aquarium also?
The Waikiki Aquarium started in July of 2020. It was accepted May 6, 2021. The Waikiki Aquarium did experience a lot of difficulties over COVID being closed. And so there are many reports in the record where Provost Bruno reported that slowed down the corrective actions. There were 15 corrective actions. Provost Bruno at the September 7, 2023 meeting did pledge that it would be done. They would all be done by the end of last year. He expects it to be done, and I could actually give you the exact language that was said. Pledge to deliver a final report on or before Friday, December 22, 2023.
And was it?
It is not confirmed that it's all completed. The latest was we were given information in January, and our auditor has requested additional information to confirm that all the audit topics are closed, but it looks like there are 7 that are not confirmed to be closed yet. So I'm just choosing my words carefully because they could be completed, but we have not received enough information to confirm that they are. So I do believe that our next audit meeting will be in April, and I hope to get this agendized so that we can have a status on the Waikiki Aquarium corrective action.
Well, I commend you and appreciate the fact that you're willing to take these items up and hold them accountable to do what they say they're going to do, because this is not the only situation. We have a lot of contracts with the general counsel that is open, hasn't been closed. We have a lot of other construction type contracts that we keep asking them and they go, oh yeah, we didn't close it yet, and there's a couple $1,000s left on this. And every year we see the same list time and time again. And so this is the first time I've seen a regent hold the administration to some of these deadlines. So thank you. Questions? Senator?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Laura, for being here. I first would like to commend you for your work on, bringing to light this issue of student housing. I think it's been an issue for many years. I think the students have known it very intimately that it's been a problem. And I think finally it's time that I think the board, knows it's a problem, now the administration. So I think it's great that you actually, were able to get them to go on a tour. And I guess, from here on out, what is your vision of how we're going to fix this student housing problem? I know you're looking at it from a 30,000-foot level, you're waiting for the audit, but how are we going to get our way out of it? I know you were the one that brought it pretty much to light, so I think we'd like to get some insight on how you're going to lead us through the next phase potentially.
There are so many pieces to this. I did confirm at the last meeting with Vice President Govea that, and with our auditor, that KMH is on track with their work. So they're doing a financial audit of the previous student housing records, and it's my understanding that in June, they will come back with a report giving recommendations of the different buildings and what needs to be charged and what the options are for that. So those are for the existing buildings that are online. So at that point in June, we'll have a better idea of how to run the existing beds we have. But regarding Halinoilani and Halewainani, the regents requested $80 million and $40 million to be put into the budget. It didn't make it out from the governor to do the minimum to Halinoilani to put it back online. There are other proposals out there regarding what can be done with Halinoilani, so I do believe that in the future we will be given those proposals and a decision can be made, but we have to see what they are.
But it sounds like the regents are finally getting the monthly report. Do you feel like there's adequate progress from the administration that they're making the progress that's needed in hitting the benchmarks and targets?
I absolutely appreciate the monthly updates, and we are understanding what's going on just so much more. The issue is funding. So we were just at UH Hilo, and there was a laundry list of what needs to be done for each dorm, and it's contingent on funding. So even though it's on the to-do list, I don't know when or if it will ever get done. I don't quite know what the revenue sources are available, and it seems that they may not be available. So best laid plans, no funding, doesn't happen. So that part I don't quite understand yet.
But we should know more once your audit's completed.
We should know more about the KMH side, which will talk about each building. And the administration knows that we are very interested in plans for Halinoilani and Halewainani to make sure Halewainani does not become Halinoilani in a couple years. And also, the regents know that with the second track of the student housing audit, we will have a discussion, hopefully in April, about what our goals may be for student housing and to put that into region policy. And I feel it's such a great opportunity because we will have a new president and we can work with the new president, having set a new goal for student housing, possibly, if that's what the board would like, and work with the new president to reach that goal. One part of the second track of student housing, the audit, that's the forward-looking, is looking at other like universities to see what their experiences are, what their capacity to house, percentage of students Right now, we're at about 15% we can house at Manoa. And Senator, I know your deep interest and support for housing. And so one part of this is if we can house more students on campus, we can free up community housing. And that community housing is in a range of, more low income for people who really need the housing in the community. So if we can sort out things, but we can provide more beds on campus, then we can also help some of the community housing issues in that area.
Well, as I said, I thank you for your leadership on this. I hope you continue pushing. I think it's an area worth fighting for. I think it's been frustrating, I think, at the legislature to see that it's a systematic issue that's been there for a while, and we're only uncovering it, now, and we're trying to dig deep into it. But it really needed to be fixed probably 5-10 years ago, but I think we got to fix it now. And so I think that's the big challenge for the region. So I'd say just keep on moving in that direction, because I think it's that important. I just wanted to make one more question, I guess, moving to the next question that in your questionnaire about the betterment of the university, and you were pushing the separation of the UH president and the Manoa chancellor. And I think coming from someone who is from a neighbor island, I truly appreciate that statement. I guess maybe you can kind of walk us through your thought process. And I think I would imagine just during the short time you've been on the Board of Regents, you've kind of seen some of the sometimes Manoa-centricness of the university system and how that might help us pivot a little bit away through a system perspective.
Absolutely. The UH system is, the UH system has an enormous responsibility to the people of Hawaii. And being born and raised on Maui, it has an enormous responsibility to the neighbor islanders. And we're Maui Nui, so it's Maui, Molokai, Lanai. And there was just an article by our chancellor in the paper about a council member and all of her children who have gone through the University of Hawaii Maui College. And that was so heartwarming, because that's how we better our community and ourselves and our families and provide for our families. And so the strength of the entire system has to be paramount. And that would be the role of the UH system president. Manoa it has so many wonderful things to it that a Manoa chancellor can and should focus on academically and also with athletics.
Great. Thank you, Chair.
I wanted to follow up, if I could, on a question that you answered for Senator Hashimoto on the housing issue being contingent on funding. And I think that's been my frustration and some of the other senators, is that what is the priorities of the university in relationship to the entire university? And so when we look at something like student housing and the funding, it would be imperative that the regents, because according to the president, it's the regent's budget, it's not the president's budget, he stated that. So if that's the case, then what is the priority as to whatever funding is available, where should it go? Because the decisions have been made that it go to Ching Field. So they used RIM monies to repair and to initially do Ching Field, approximately $6 million initially, when the housing issue was there. Nobody brought it up until you came aboard and raised it and got a tour and got all the focus on it. It's been sitting empty for 7 years, and the rest of the dorms have been depleting. The funding of student housing has not been used to repair any housing. Some of it went to Atherton to take care of the costs for Atherton. So there's concerns. And then the governor gave an extra $20 million that again went to moving the field so that Ching Field could be widened, or to more encompass more 5,000 more seats. So again, funding is available, but it's where's the UH's priorities as to where these funds are going to go. The regents just approved NOAA, which is another commitment of, I think, $6 million up front, and over the 50 years, $2 million a year to subsidize the rents. So we're talking in excess of $50 million coming out of the university on a vacant parcel right now. And yes, you want to put more graduate housing there. But in the meantime, you have Halinoelani sitting there for 7 years. So is that the kind of decisions you think that the region should be making and guiding the administration and holding them accountable? And how do you hold them accountable?
Thank you for that question. As I wrote about in my questionnaire, we have a new board. Our meetings are longer, hard questions are asked, and we are engaged. That's one reason why we have a committee of the whole for the presidential search. And I've been here for 8 months, and I really enjoy working with my fellow regents. We have 5 women regents out of 11. 4 of us are attorneys, almost attorneys, and 2 are judges. And I don't think that's a coincidence. We are in having a new board. We are engaged, and there are so many things that we'd like to look at. But right now, the presidential search is really top of the list. But I'm confident that with our leadership and this new supportive environment, that we'll be able to work through these different issues. But it's been 8 months, and we have some momentum. So I hope we can continue that.
But it's concerning when I read the minutes and I watch the hearings on, like, the fact that the student housing was delayed and being put on, was not put on immediately. Just some of the decisions the leadership is making concerns me. And then, do you hold the president accountable, or who do you hold accountable? Because I'm hearing things like, or if you read the testimony or the questionnaire answers, it's like, oh, we don't judge the president individually, we judge it collectively. How do you do that? Don't you hire and fire the president? Don't you be the one that's supposed to be holding him accountable? And should there be consequences and accountability? How do you have accountability with no consequences?
Ultimately, it is the president. We did do a review of the president. He did announce that his intention to retire at the end of the year. And so we jumped into the presidential search process, which has really taken up a lot of the board focus.
Yeah, I don't want to get into the process of the presidential, but I do want to make sure that whoever that president is, that the board of regents are going to be, holding them accountable and making sure that, just as we're going to try to hold you guys accountable, the board, that you're holding the president and the administration and their actions accountable. And there needs to be, we don't want to do it in public, but then, the public needs to know what's going on and who's being held accountable. Otherwise, you'll get kind of testimonies you're going to see today or have seen on the website, because they don't feel like there's any accountability.
I do feel that the public's watching our presidential search process and this new board we're on, questions we're asking. And so I'm hopeful for our opportunity to bring on a new president and to work with that person to set goals and move forward.
Okay. Members, any other questions for Senator Favela?
Well, just totally off the topic, usually that's where I go. But I'm just, for me, I'm happy to get to talk to you and get to see you in this meeting, because, you do a lot of things for the women in our community and advocating, and, sometimes that doesn't really resonate in this island of men. And even where you stay too, there's a lot of men. But anyway, it's good to see that there's somebody advocating for our women going forward, because, I'm surrounded with strong women and one other strong brother. But it's really good to have that in there in the region, because sometimes we just think everything is about sports and other things, and we just want to make sure that we have a well-rounded region. And I just thank you for your service to our women in our community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one last question. You did say in your questionnaire, should I be confirmed, expect more of these site visits? So can you tell us any, what you have in mind, the site visits?
I don't actually have any in mind right now, but it will evolve. It will evolve. We have certain audits right now, but every year we'll have a new audit plan. We'll have certain audits that close, and that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to close Warrior Rec Center with one corrective action to close it out so we can make room for the next audit. Same with Waikiki Aquarium. There were a lot of corrective actions there, but I hope we will get to close it very soon. And we can, then that's space for our auditor to maybe take up another Regent suggested topic so that we can move on to new topics of areas that we can just make the university better.
You know, maybe not in relationship to audits, but just in the relationship of knowing what's going on the different campuses. Do you feel that the regents spend enough time visiting other campuses? I know you folks have a board meeting at each campus once a year, but despite that visit, does board members actually make it a point to go and visit campuses? Because I know we've gone to campuses and we go unannounced because we want to see what's going on, and we find a lot of things, you know, like ghost towns at these campuses. The buildings aren't being used, and yet I have a list here I could share with you that I asked the administration for all the areas in which we're renting space and paying for space for university activities when we have campuses that have classrooms and offices that aren't being utilized. Are you folks aware of that?
So part of this new board is that we are showing up to things a lot more, and I think it's changing the culture on how we are interested. Regent Hawai'i and I have gone to a different games, and we went to the opening of the blessing of the new athletic center and the weight room, and I think it's a culture change, and so we are going to start showing up more, and I believe that's going to.
Is that just the two of you going to show up more? I know
and
I've seen
Governor.
Neil Abercrombie shows up at a lot of stuff here.
We've
But
been-
yeah, regents have been absent. They continue to be absent, even as we speak.
And I do appreciate that the administration accommodated us so quickly with Warrior Rec Center, Waikiki Aquarium, and most of the regents went to the student housing tour. And
But they weren't so quick to put the student housing tour for you guys, right? Wasn't there a little pushback?
I do believe there's just a lot going on, and they restructured that recently, so I can't speak to, you know, the scheduling of that, but we were able to do it. And I hope that by doing these things, everyone's seeing that how important it is for us as regents to be present, because we can and should and will help how we can, and we need to know what we're talking about.
Yeah, and we would like the regions to take a greater role. Then we don't have to, because we get criticized for micromanaging, we get criticized for trying to get involved and controlling things, which is not true. We don't want to do it. I don't want to be involved in the presidential search. My name keep coming up, like we want to control the presidential search. That is the farthest thing from my mind, that I want to choose a president or how that president is chosen. That's what you guys are appointed for. But somehow they always try to deflect anything back to us. So yeah, if anybody is trying to influence you guys, please let us know. We want to know who it is. Okay, anything, Senator Fukunaga?
Kind of a follow-up, you know, in one of your responses, you talked about how one of your priorities was to continually formulate, revise, and evaluate innovative and supportive student success strategies specific for the unique student needs of each campus. And I think, you know, one of the things that is truly unique is that the neighbor island campuses are so different from the Oahu campuses. And so I wanted to get a sense of what you saw as some of the specific strengths particular to the Maui campus, and especially, you know, in light of the wildfires this past year, how, I guess, so many programs with Maui Community College and, you know, the Maui College actually sort of took on areas that were, you know, far beyond what you would have expected of them. Do you see some new opportunities along those lines?
Thank you so much for that question. And Maui was really at in my thoughts when I was writing that as one of my priorities, because I taught business law and business law primarily at UH Maui College for 5 academic years. And so that's a lot of students that I got to know and got to work with. And I really appreciated my non-traditional students, but they had certain barriers to being successful as students: childcare, food insecurity, housing. And so the basic needs, supporting the basic needs of students, definitely very important for the neighbor islands and on Maui in particular. Regarding the wildfires, I just want to say to UH Maui College, I'm so appreciative how they jumped in, and I had a conversation with our chancellor about early on, we needed to make meals. They needed meals out in Lahaina, and we have a facility to do that. And there were some questions over, I'm a lawyer, liability, how's this gonna work? And we had to do it. We just had to do it. That's who we are. We are Maui, and we just did it. We made it happen. So that's what I mean by the neighbor islanders and the needs of the students and the community. You just get it. Like there's no one else. It's us. We have to make it happen. We have to figure it out. And we did. And I'm just so in awe of what the University on Maui did and appreciative.
Thank you.
Senator Kidani, last question.
Yes, I'm not sure if the regents are aware that on the UH West Oahu campus, there's a charter school called Dream House, which is young students. And I'm not sure that, I don't know if you guys approve of that or not, or if you're aware of it, but I just find that something that I'm concerned about, that to have young students on a campus with older students and adults.
Thank you for mentioning that. Something to look into.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions, thank you very much. Just know the process is that at the end, after we vote, then the names go down to the floor, and at some point it's going to be put on the agenda, and then the final vote is going to be taken by the entire Senate, and notification will be given. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
okay, moving on to our next appointee. We have GM 597, submitting for the consideration and confirmation to the Board of Regents of the University of Hawai'i, Alapaki Nahalea, for a term to expire 6/30/2028. And we have testifying in person, we have Christian Fern for the University of Hawaii Professional Assembly. Okay, thank you. We have Megan Harden. Megan? In opposition, thank you. We have Bronson Azama testifying for ASUH. Bronson?
Yes, adding on the written comments.
Thank you. We have Ernie Wilson.
One of the things I want to say, first of all, my comments today.
Sit down.
My comments today is based upon what I've seen and what I've learned about Aupaki Nahalea since I've been on the board, or since he's been associated with the board. And from what I've observed since he's been the latest, the board chair, but even prior to that, when he was the vice chair of the board, I saw, and we've had discussions about the changes that needed to happen. One of the things is, the organization structure, first of all, or organizational culture, let me correct that, how things get done at the university, within the institution, has not always been in many instances what it should be. And one of the things that with Alapaki becoming the chair and by working with him as the vice chair, it's really given me the opportunity to really come out and say, you know, I think we need to change the culture of this organization, first of all, to make it more of a, so that it meets the needs, not only today, but the needs of the future going forward.
Thank you.
You know, and I think that's very, and I'm a strategic person from where my background is always looking forward. And one of the things that I want to say in that regards is and this is a comment we can attribute to Senator Dan Inouye when he said to some good friends of mine that now is the time for us to face west and not east. And, you know, I take that and interpret that Hawaii is not at the crossroads for the United States. Hawaii is at the apex of this country. And the job that we do
Regent,
has to take in consideration.
your time has ended, so if you want to summarize,
Right, yes.
okay.
But, so, I support him because of our ability, I think now, with the change coming about, changes we see coming about, they're strongly support him.
Thank you. Okay, we have, let's see, Jane Miskovich from the County of Hawaii in support, Cheryl Kauhani Lupanui in support, Kiopo Relitz, Office of Hawaiian Affairs in support, Jesse Suki in support, Curtis Morocco in support, B. Hansen in support, Beth Robinson in support, Paula Chan, opposition, Marilyn Moniz, opposition, Lori Tochiki in support, Diane Paloma support, Stacy Ferrero support, Wayne Higaki support, Patty Cook support, Jessica Kaneakua support, Abigail Shum in opposition, Raina Brown in opposition, Makai Freitas in support, Deborah Shim opposed in opposition, Melissa Pavacek in support, Jill Nonokawa in opposition, Colin Masanas in opposition, David Chu opposition, Grace in opposition, Kuekeo Kalani Kamakea Ohelo in support, Chantatsui in support, anonymous email opposed, Sheila Baldado comments, Leigh Capono support, Lenny Espinoza opposition, Amy Warrington opposition, Montserrat Montanez E. Arbo opposed, Lyle Kajiro opposed, and Kyle Marie KT Kauhaihao in opposition. Anyone else here wishing to testify on this measure? If not, we invite the appointee. Mr. Nahaleo, you're welcome to give opening remarks.
Thank you. Aloha, Chair Kim, Vice Chair Gidani, members of the committee. It's been an honor to serve as a regent these past 5 years. It's also been an incredible challenge. As has been opined, these positions are important. I had to think long and hard before going through the process again to consider a second term, because I know the sacrifices that have to be made to take these positions, and what's at stake for Hawaii and what the university needs to be for our future. And after long deliberation with family and friends, I decided to go through the process again because I really do love the university. I believe in it. I think we do a lot of things really well, and we have so much more we could be. And so I'm committed to helping lift up the university to that. And you have my responses to the questions. So with that, I'm happy to appreciate your consideration.
Okay, members, since this is a reappointment, and you can ask any questions, I do suggest that we try to focus on the first 4 years and then the second. But in that case, we're open to questions. Anybody want to start off? Okay, if not, Senator Hashimoto.
Thank you for being here. So I guess just building off of the question of, the last regent, I guess, when did you realize that student housing in Manoa was in trouble?
I think I knew it was an issue, maybe after my first year, but I wouldn't say I understood that it was in the condition it was. There are a lot of things are in need of attention, and so I thought it was one of those things. I think it was probably not till late 2022 that I thought that there needed to be more attention paid, although at that point I still didn't really fully understand, the details. As someone mentioned earlier, housing is a system level issue. There's different types of housing that have to be provided, different age of facilities, there's intake for housing, how to respond, and so I think we really didn't dive into it I didn't really know until we dove into it more fully as a board in 2023, and starting to getting a more comprehensive update about the condition of every building, the latest that there were improvements made. So I would say in 2023.
So you didn't know that there was a vacant dorm on the Manoa campus?
I did know that.
But how come nothing was done at the Board of Regents level when there was a vacant dorm there? And, housing is such a crisis in our community, and the Regents didn't do anything until this year.
I would say of all the issues that we have to consider as Regents, housing at Manoa is probably the one I'm most disappointed in terms of me not being on top of that issue. I could sit here and make a lot of excuses as to why and what other things I prioritized, but the severity of the issue missed my radar. And I make no excuses for that. It's certainly a priority for me now. And I'm committed to making sure that we don't just fix facilities that are vacant, or we don't just address the conditions that are currently there, that we create a housing process and system that we don't ever get into this state again.
Do you think the administration is moving fast enough to address this issue?
Because I have some experience with facilities, I understand there's some complexities where it's not. I think we're doing the right thing with the KMH contract and trying to take a more holistic look at the condition of each building, comparing that to what the housing demand actually is. We're gonna have to assess cost of repair versus replace. One of the things I've been pushing hard is to not look at this as only a Manoa issue, it's also a UH Hilo issue. And I think the admin has done a good job of stepping up and saying it's not only about condition of facility, it's about the whole housing experience and student life. And
So do you feel that the housing experience is adequate for our students?
I do not.
So I guess the question is what are we gonna do about it, right? And is the Regents taking a leadership role in making sure that experience changes?
I do think Regents, and I think Regent Akitaka deserves a lot of credit, as you all noted, for really lighting a fire under this issue. But at this point, it's an all hands on deck issue. I think Regents need to keep the pressure on and make it clear that that's a priority for us. We need to work with administration. We can't certainly do it from our seat, but we have to hold administration accountable. I think there are things happening while we're waiting for the KMH report. We're also working on the audit exercise, but also we're restructuring how Manoa housing is being governed. And so there's a lot of things moving as we speak. And I also applaud Regents for pushing into the UH Hilo space so that we're not doing this in isolation, but if we're gonna make improvements as a system, let's make sure UH Hilo is addressed as well.
No, and I get it. I think what disappoints me is that when we say we didn't know the student experience for housing was an issue, I think that's alarming because I think it's been an issue way back when I had to go stay at UH for summer conferences, and that was back in like 03, 04, and it was a bad experience. And that's the reason why I didn't even go to UH, because of the housing experience. And now we're fast forward to 2020s and we still haven't fixed it. Thankfully, there's a region that's pushing hard for it, but I think the whole board needs to be, I think you said the right things, but I just want to make sure we finally fix this issue, right? And I really want to get your commitment that this is like top of mind, that we're going to actually do something that's different than just saying, okay, administration, right? You're going to fix it and we're just going to wait and we're going to we're just going to hope that it happens, but I think we need regents that will, make sure that it happens, right? And I just want to make sure that you get that, you have that commitment in making sure that happens.
Absolutely. For housing, like I said, there's no other issue that I feel more responsible for not seeing earlier. And other issues that I've seen and taken charge of, there have been measured improvement, and this is one that I'm committed to as well. I do want to do it in a very methodical way. So as you say, if I'm confirmed that, when I leave, that we can say the issue has been fixed, not band-aided, not, someone got scapegoated, but we have the housing our students need. The one thing I would add, though, is, as Regent Akitake mentioned, this is going to be balanced with cost. Because housing is financially self-sufficient, we're going to have to find a way to balance affordability with the quality experience, and I think that, that's going to make it a.
But do you believe in the current policy of making it so dirt cheap that our facilities are so broken down because it's
Not at
cheap?
all, not at all, Senator. I agree. The condition of the facilities right now is not appropriate. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Just want to follow up. I appreciate what you're saying, Chair, that going forward, but it concerns me when I read the minutes, and in the minutes regarding putting housing on the agenda, it says here that Board Chair Nahalea reiterated OIA's audit of student housing at Manoa is in progress, also provide the basis for board leadership decision not to place this issue on the committee or board agenda at this time. And then at another meeting, you went on and explained how things get onto an agenda. Chair Nahalea also went over some of the considerations taken into account by board leadership when developing committee and board agendas, including the urgency of the matter, whether there are items requiring board action or time constraints, and scheduling conflicts to justify why you weren't putting that on the agenda. So if, in fact, what you say is top of mind, this is as late as November, that you seem to be not considering it urgent.
May I respond?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I think for me, the urgency of housing is not in the monthly reports, it's in the actual actions that are occurring. And I think all regents, we have the ability to track progress, even if it's not scheduled. I think that scheduling is important, and having a cadence of open public updates on the progress is absolutely critical. But if we're scheduling it monthly, then that's at the sacrifice of other things that have to be addressed too on the agendas, as I shared earlier. Because these regions are much more engaged with pretty much every agenda topic, our meetings are going much longer, and we're often not getting through agenda items. So for that particular decision, and I don't make that alone, I do that with the two vice chairs, we look at all the things that regions have to address at any meeting, and we try to factor out how much time is each going to take. And so the decision on that one was simply that the housing progress, the urgency of making progress wasn't going to be impeded by not having an update. Regions as a whole discussed that at the meeting, and we collectively decided that we wanted to have a monthly update. And so that's what we're doing now.
But isn't that the problem that the public has? The fact that you don't have things on the agenda, you're not speaking in public, it's not transparent. And so that's a concern. And then my understanding too is that the administration pushbacks at these meetings, and they don't want certain things placed on the agenda. And so I don't know why they should be involved to that extent as to determine what should be on the agenda versus the fact that the regents themselves should be the determinant of what goes on the agenda. Certainly you have to coordinate it with the administration, but they serve at the pleasure of the board.
I agree completely. I don't know where you're hearing that admin sets the board agendas. I do that with the two vice chairs.
Well, you mentioned it right here, that you do it in conjunction with the administration and the leadership.
Yeah, that administration, we work together to, like I mentioned, what issues the board have to decide. We have just a plethora of things to address, to get updated on, to approve. So when we look at the agenda, we work with admin to make sure that all the things that are required are covered.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
I just had a follow-up. So you mentioned that when you put together the agenda, you work with the two vice chairs.
Yes.
the three of you meet to discuss the agenda?
We meet with admin and we go over the committee meetings and the full board meetings that are coming up. One of the things that we have to be careful of is that we're not violating sunshine law. Our understanding is we have that exemption just to set agendas. And so the meeting is only for the agenda setting.
So three of you meet to discuss it.
Correct.
And OIP said that there is an exemption for the three of you to meet on it?
To set the agenda, to meet only for the agenda setting, yeah.
And you don't discuss any of the, I mean, how would you do that though? Because wouldn't you be discussing issues to determine if it should be on the agenda?
When council sits in on those meetings, in particular for this issue, is so that they can explain why there's an urgency or a deadline to schedule this, you know, what's pending for our legal obligations. And so we discuss it to the extent we know if it has to be scheduled or not.
So who keeps records of those meetings?
That's a really good question. And our board secretary, who's here, is the person who kind of administers that meeting for the Board of Regents, and then follows up with admin. Like if we set the agenda, and sometimes there's things that have to get materials put together, then she's the interface with admin from that after that meeting.
Seems awkward that you would be discussing the importance of issues to go on the agenda. You're still discussing the items.
I would agree it's awkward. And one of the first questions I asked when I joined board leadership was, you know, what is not the rationale, what is the exemption that allows us to have this conversation? And you do have to be deliberate, right, about not jumping into deliberation.
Okay, it's awkward.
If I could also just quickly say, we have talked about other ways to do agenda setting that would include the committee chairs more and to take more ownership over the process from the region side.
But you don't know, you don't have any documentation or record keeping of those meetings?
Correct, other than, nothing official, nothing approved, but I do know board secretary does keep notes for every meeting.
Senator DeCoy?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to be here. Thank you for being here as well.
Well.
So I wanted to follow up on your question number 4. While you mentioned that the board doesn't hold the president accountable individually, but rather collectively, it's important to ensure that collective accountability doesn't dilute individual responsibility. So each member of the board should still uphold their duty to ensure that the president and the administration operate with transparency, integrity, and the best interests of the university and its stakeholders. I remember you at DHHL as the director. And my question is, with that being said, then why is it when you were the director of DHHL that you did away with the grants committee that would have vet the grants program that did allow just yourself to single-handedly approve these grants without oversight?
I don't recall that, but I'm certain that I did no such thing. So unless somebody can,
So let me help you.
yeah.
We were all invited from the neighbor islands as leaders in our homestead communities. It was held at Kapolei at the new building. We were just done eating lunch and we were going over the implementation and the capacity grants program. When, of course, many of us had said at that time, where's that grant program going? And your response was that you have just dismantled the committee for the grants program and that you would be approving those grants. Case in point, and about 2 weeks later, you single-handedly approved a $250,000 grant to an organization that many across the state had questioned.
Senator, I really wish I could recall what you're referencing. Just knowing who I am as a person and my own experience in grant making, I just know that's not something I would do. I certainly respect if that's the perception that you and others felt.
I'll just tell you, I was sitting there and I asked that question. As much as I was fed very well, and most of us were tired and ready to head back to our islands that we came from, we looked around the room and said, what's going to happen to this committee now that it's being dismantled? And who will vet the grants to make sure that those that was representative of that committee from the islands could say that those grants are validly placed so that we could build capacity in our associations? So because there were 3 different tiers of grants, we questioned the fact that how would we have built that capacity if we dismantled that committee that would be able to give insight of whether or not these associations that were going to be receiving of those funds would be able to help.
Again, I really just know that's not in my character, and this is a sensitive one for me because what I do know is that a lot of grant dollars were being distributed in that fashion.
And that's why we question why
yeah.
you would dismantle that committee.
Yeah, and so, yeah.
So I just wanted, for you to, basically answer that, because when you answered question 4 and it was no, nothing against the president itself, but how you answered that question, it kind of triggered something. And if I can follow up with a second question, Madam Chair? In regards to number 8 in your response, you choose to work collaboratively with your fellow regents. And I worked really closely prior with the former deputy, Bobby Hall, in regards to housing and agriculture that we literally left on the side for DHHL. I basically wanted to understand what happened to our deputy when we were at DHHL that made him voluntarily leave.
I would not be appropriate for me to speak for Bobby. Anyone who's in these leadership positions know that, there's no joke positions. And, years later, you can be accused of something with no heads up. I mean, this is so for real, so.
So how would you describe at that time the work culture and environment during your time at DHHL? As you know, we've had our challenges with housing and putting our people back on the lands. How would you have described that work environment as we've had our challenges going
The work
forward?
environment, when I was at Hawaiian Homes for my stint, I can say with confidence and pride that there was a absolute insistence that beneficiaries become the focus of the department. That event that you're referencing was my, like, a way to say beneficiaries deserve to be treated with respect and hosted. They should be able to tour the building and meet the people who's answering the phone when they call. We changed the pictures on the wall from staff to kuhio and beneficiaries. So I feel like the culture, not everybody liked that, but I will stand confidently in my putting a stake down that the trust was for the beneficiaries and that they should be the priority. And not everybody liked that.
No, and I think we all had that same goal, and to today we still carry that. But during that time, I have not seen an improvement of whether or not we had more people that were then put into housing with availability of those lands, as well as those lands being awarded, so that the culture and that environment would have stayed there. And that was basically my issue, because I can only keep Onohana together if I have them in a safe place with shelter and their family together. But thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator De La Cruz.
Thank you. How much input and involvement as chair did you have putting together the UH budget?
I would say putting together the budget was very limited. We trust admin and Vice President Calvert Young to put together the initial budget, and then we really review that collectively as a board. I don't get more independently involved in the budget.
And so define review.
Like through our committee and board meetings.
And so do you change anything?
I did not, no.
You just, whatever they present, you just rubber stamp?
I wouldn't say rubber stamp, but we accepted the budget that was presented.
Can I just ask, how much time does the Regents have to review the budget before voting on it, since you got it?
We review it at committee in time in terms of weeks, or I guess Regents get materials, well in advance of the committee meeting. We have a chance to.
So how far in advance did you get the budget? Because I know one of the Regents claimed that they didn't have enough time to go over it.
I don't remember exactly, how much days I got in advance.
Okay. Senator De La Cruz, sorry, I didn't mean to.
So you don't find that it should be the Regent's role to set the budget priorities?
I do.
So that with just reviewing and then just agreeing with the administration?
So I'm answering this first personally. I'm not speaking on behalf of Regents. Is that the budget since I've joined, the way that it's a big budget, right? And it's primarily campus-based. I have had issues with the way it's presented because I think it's difficult to ask more strategic system questions when you're getting this stuff campus by campus. So personally, I've talked to admin and Calvert in particular about how the accounting is done, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert, but it's the way I approach it versus it's difficult for me to question the efficacy of a particular facilities improvement, right? So
why vote for it?
because I think what I do is track the budget in comparison to previous years and what the trend looks like, and is it anything out of the ordinary and what's being increased or decreased. That's kind of how I look at it, right or wrong. It allows me to engage in questions. What has happened, one of the reasons I pushed hard for us to have an overarching system strategic plan is so that the budget the campuses present are articulated against the strategic priorities, which makes it easier for me as a regent to push on, is this a realistic way to achieve those priorities? It's just the way I approach it.
Yeah, so why vote for it then? If you don't agree with the approach, you're unsure with the numbers.
I would say I voted for the budgets
Or why not vote no?
because I've had faith in what was presented and the way questions are answered. I've found them acceptable.
So even despite student or any type of input saying that they want to see efforts in different parts of the system or the campus, do you at least let the administration know, hey, there's some people who think that we should be prioritizing this instead, or?
Yeah, and I have made those comments on the record, and I've made those comments, off the record, just like questioning about, why is this the funding approach? And I think, every year you get a little bit better at it.
But you've been there 4 years already, right?
Yes, sir.
And every year you just vote yes without really understanding it?
I wouldn't say I don't understand it, and I wouldn't say that I understand every single item inside the Board of Regents budget.
Well, the president has been on record saying it's not the president's budget, it's the Board of Regents' budget.
He's correct. Like, we ultimately approve it, and,
So, but if you're not putting it together, then you're just rubber stamping it.
again, I'm pretty hard on myself. So I wouldn't say that we rubber stamp it, but I certainly agree there hasn't been a wealth of debate or pushback on the Board of Regent budget for the years I've been there, including from me. I may have been one of the more vocal questioners, but that hasn't been the culture of the regents since I've been there.
I just want to add that, I went through all the minutes. That's just me and my staff. And even from you, there's very little, you said they're based on questions or answers, the way they answered. There are barely any questions than any answers. So I'm not sure how you can say that when it's not in the minutes. And if it's not in the minutes, then it wasn't discussed, right?
Yeah, I'd have to see which meetings we're referencing. I think a lot.
The budget ones, the one that you had the
The
budget.
budget,
Yeah, yeah.
everything. Got all the research. Sorry.
So do you ask, how do you balance revenue generation with budget cuts? I mean, there hasn't been any, we've talked about public-private partnership. There's been quite a bit of projects on the campus that talk about public-private, and they've just been delayed and delayed and delayed. How do you hold the administration accountable?
On project by project basis, we tend to dive into the actual projects as they're presented, and oftentimes we have to be.
Without knowing the budget, though?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Because they're related, right? The projects
Yes.
and the budget. But
Yes.
you don't know the budget, but you're going deep into the projects.
Well, when we get presented the projects, for example, we have to approve an amendment to the MOU or something, right? We get the project budget, but to the point, right, the project budget isn't always presented inside of the system budget. So
But you don't ask, how is it related? How is it connected?
when we not normally when we're looking at it project by project, that has not really arisen.
So how do you know if a project is going to have an outcome that's positive for the students, if you don't understand how it's related to everything else?
I wouldn't say there isn't understanding about the relationship. I just think that the system budget that we get, this campus by campus, doesn't always align with the strategic priorities that were recently approved. So they look at them in fairly siloed conditions. That is one of the things which I put in my comments, I think is important for the university to relook at the way we're accounting for our spend, both revenue and expenditures, so that these are the kind of questions that regions can dive into.
So I go back to, why not vote no then? If they're not aligning with some of these other things that they should be aligning with.
So my honest answer is that every year I'm a regent, I have to make a decision about what is it that can be approved, what's the priorities, what are the other contextual issues we're facing, and for the 4 years I've been on, there have been some pretty big issues that have been drawing attention. And I'm not saying that to make an excuse. I just think actually this is a really important line of questioning, and it's where UH and Regents in particular need to get better. But the reason I feel like it did much of this from my seat, and that we should be doing more of it.
But you haven't.
Limited. I have been a pain in many administrators' butts because I'll ask questions like that to try to understand, but I also believe the system has to continue, right? Like I feel like I have to be an advocate and champion for the university while I'm also holding them accountable. So I try to balance pushing, learning, understanding. I don't know everything. How do I get up to speed? How do I get more information? How do I balance that with taking positions prematurely and acting like I know the answers with when I really want to push on something that I'm prepared to do that. So I've been trying to do that every year, do a little bit more of that. That's my approach.
Okay, so if you want to try to hold them accountable and support the university, but you don't understand the budget, how would you defend their budget to us?
It would be, look, to defend the entire university budget to the legislature would be taxing for me or any regent, I'm sure.
Yeah, but even from the broad strokes, why this much going to community college? Why this much going to certain programs? Why nothing going to housing?
I think it's a fair question, and I actually think I'm somewhat prepared to answer many of those broader system level discussions, such as what's going to community colleges and what are we prioritizing where? I mean,
So have you ever attended a WHAM info briefing for the UH so that you
not,
can?
not in person, no.
Okay, so when I think Randy Moore was chair, he came and he was at least there to participate. But this last year, I don't think we recall seeing you there.
Correct, and I apologize. I would have been here, but I was obligated on the mainland, and I didn't get much notice about the scheduling. But I could have certainly been monitoring and keeping my schedule clear during that period.
So when the governor rejected the 80 million for Halenoilani, what's the plan now? What do you just say, oh, sorry, we didn't get it, and it just stays vacant?
I think that's what I said earlier. That's why I think housing, it's facilities in general. It's not like renovating your kitchen, right? So I think the study is really important, so that we're looking at facts, and that we can make more informed decisions.
But you gotta still have a timeline, right? Because
Yeah.
it's been vacant for more than 7
Yes.
years. And
Yeah,
the president said he didn't know about it. It was news to him at the info briefing. And yet, was there any follow-up at the subsequent regents meeting saying, what do you mean you didn't know about it? You're the chancellor. You're not just the president, you're the chancellor.
there was, and he did take responsibility. That is ultimately up to him. But
But 7 years, if that happened at any company or any other university, there'd be a lot more consequences for that.
yeah, and I've heard that a lot. Like, where's the consequences? For the president or others. I know it doesn't seem like much to some people, but it was a finding in his evaluation. It was, and I think if the
So
president,
what were the consequences then?
I would agree that there hasn't been any personal consequence on him.
Okay, so no consequences on these bad decisions, and then rubber stamping a budget. Okay, in the UH's response to WHAM, they identified a whole bunch of unused space within the university system. So there's at least 20 billion buildings that are unused, and many of them are 100% unused. Has the regents tried to at least talk to the administration and say, what are you doing with all this unused space?
I'm not aware of that. That's first time it's coming to my attention. And
So there's no questioning to the university. I mean, we ask DAGs all the time, is there office space? Where are you making sure that we don't lease space so that we can use state space? I mean, we're constantly asking that.
yeah,
But yet, I mean, I can go down the list. You have Castle Memorial Caretaker's Cottage, 100% Lincoln Hall, Annex 1, Lincoln Hall, Annex 2, Luna Lee. I mean, there's a whole bunch of buildings that are not used. There's some of them, maybe in the 90s not used. The lowest one is probably 13%, which is the out of body. And sustainable classroom, 46%, farming classroom building, 67%.
And in conjunction with that, I have the listing on February 9th that was submitted on all the properties that are being rented and paid for rents for UH instead of them utilizing the vacancy. So did you guys get that list from the administration as well? Because we've asked for that several times over the years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm aware of both vacancies and renting space, but I'd have to go through that list line by line. And what I would typically do is go to administration and ask, can you explain to me what these are?
So do
I
you
have
think
not-
that's fiscally responsible, that we have all these unused buildings and at the same time we're leasing space?
Why wouldn't you put it on the agenda?
What has happened for me as a regent, like in these real life situations, is that typically when I go, can you explain, got this complaint or this letter, can we go through this? There's usually a mix, right? There's a lot of the things on the list, there's a reason why it's vacant, or there's a rationale, and okay, that makes sense, it makes sense. And there's some things that are, need to be addressed. And so I could put pressure on, well, let's address these issues. This one I understand, these one I don't. Same thing with what are we leasing and why, and where is it located, and why can't we?
But you guys should ask them for a plan, or say, why are they vacant? Or what's the demolition timeline, or why aren't we using them? And if we can use them, isn't it cheaper to renovate the interior instead of continuing to lease?
I think these are all fair questions, yeah. And I'll be honest, I have not looked at the vacancies versus lease lists since I've been a regent. But I'm happy to do that.
Okay, and the Regents had a resolution talking about deferred maintenance backlog, and that the campus can't add additional buildings if there's more than 10% backlog. But that doesn't seem to be upheld at all.
That's,
Because the backlog keeps growing, and then there's new buildings being asked for, but yet, I mean, how do you prioritize? You got vacant space now, got all these back maintenance issues, and then now we're getting new buildings, but they're not,
yeah.
it's like there's no control.
Yeah. I believe strongly that the controls have improved over the last 4 years.
But you don't have data that shows that, because if you had data for the number of buildings that are unused over a 4-year period, and you told me, okay, these 20, it came down from 100. Okay, I would probably agree with you. But there's no data that shows that.
We do have data that shows that from my perspective, and I certainly can produce
But you
that.
just said earlier you didn't even know about it.
Well, I didn't know about that list of vacancies. When I was mentioning the deferred maintenance issue, I am looking at it as a percentage of the budget, and the deferred maintenance gap was growing considerably. And so we did put in additional controls to do certain things like not occupy buildings that had higher operation costs than was worthwhile. So for me, I would want to go back to administration, look at the list, compare it against there's a philosophy now for deferred maintenance, and then see why is that the case? I mean, I don't know why that's the case.
I just want to just point out that this is what happens when you let the administration set the agenda. It's their agenda, and they're not highlighting any of these things. When if it was regent-driven asking these questions, then they have to respond to you. And what I'm not quite sure is that the regents and the president know who's the dog and who's the tail. And that's kind of obvious if rubber stamping the budget, not knowing all of this, how much vacant buildings there are, how much lease space you're renting. I mean, you're not there just to have them say, take a look at this, we need your vote. Got to be a lot more involved, intent, and then the regents individually and collectively should be running the agenda.
I agree.
If not, why do we need regents?
I agree.
No need regents.
Yeah, and I want to be honest that regents, particularly if you're new, you're relying on administration for much of this material, and so that is even more important that the balance is.
But you have
there.
audit committees.
So
you have a board of regent staff.
well, and as you mentioned, the things you're asking for, you guys asked for, and so this is certainly an area that
And what
should be addressed.
they sent, the responses that they sent to us, you can ask for copies. You can ask, hey, I want to see what you're sending the ledge.
That's what I'm saying.
And then
yeah.
you could have saw, wow, how come we didn't know about all these buildings? Going back to allowing them to set the agenda versus the regents taking control. Okay, last time we met when you were up, We talked a lot about community colleges and pathways and pipelines, and there's still a lot of articulation issues.
Yes.
Why? 4 years later, what has been done? You know, we have P20 at the university, yet P20 is not, they don't develop any real pipelines from DOE to community college, to career, or to the four-year campuses. There's nothing really set in stone. Yet we have all these commercials talking about P20. You know, when I met with P20, they said, oh, the counselors know. There's no documentation to say, if you want to go into cyber, these are the high schools, these are the community college programs, these are going to be the university programs, and these are the possible jobs. And we've talked about cradle to career for quite some time, but it doesn't seem like that's a priority for the regents. And then the community colleges look overlooked. The importance of CTE, we talked about that. We talked about the importance of AAs. I don't see any effort on the regents really trying to understand that more than 50% of high school students are not attending four-year campuses. Yet a majority of your agenda is focused on the four-year campuses. So we're leaving more than 50% of our students off the agenda.
This one is, I think maybe philosophically, one of the things I'm realizing is that legislators, and certainly some community from testimony, want to see things on the agenda to know that it's a priority. I agree that community colleges need to be a priority and a bigger priority. I don't think that has to be agendized for that to be the case, and a lot of good things are happening. The issue about articulation.
But you still got to hold people accountable. What does P20 do? You know, what does the Vice President of Academic Affairs do?
Yeah.
Why aren't these programs have clean articulation to the four-year campuses yet? I mean, how many years is it going to have to take?
So that one in particular, I 100% agree with you.
You know,
Yeah.
agreeing with me, and you had 4 years to at least try to do something about it. At least try do
Yeah.
something.
And I believe on that one, I believe I've tried very hard, and there are a lot of forces. And this is, you said, this has been an issue way before me, and it's still an issue.
But you control their budget. You guys approve their budget. And that's where, as you know, you can ask a lot more questions and say, well, I'm not approving this budget until some of these other things are addressed.
Yeah, I guess, one of the things I would, one of the things Regents did take on with the legislature's support was classification and tenure, and we were able to get that through. And I think this is another example of something we'll have to be fully invested as a collective board to get movement, because not everybody agrees. There's a lot of folks who feel like there's reasons not to do it and to do it. And
Okay, because there's a lot of issues at the different community colleges as well. You take Culinary Institute of the Pacific, right? I don't know how much we spent on that, and it's still not really open. Just a small section of it. And is there duplication of culinary programs throughout the entire system? You know, we've talked about the possible hub and spoke model, where you're going to at least have one campus own it, have the faculty that's needed, and they assist. I mean, there's something like that already with KCC's nursing program. The nursing program at Leeward is KCC's program. But that's probably one of the few programs like that. Yet community colleges are duplicating programs that shouldn't be duplicated, and then resources are spread thin. Facilities are never going to be superior because you have to spend dollars at different campuses. It's not a competitive environment. Yet I don't see that to be a priority of the regents. Going back to more than 50% of our students are not going to four-year campuses, and they're being left out.
For me, this hearing is about, my nomination and my qualifications, and
But it's
and
also what did you do the
I-
last 4
I
years?
agree.
Because that's
So-
how every year, every election, we gotta let our constituents know, this is what we did.
Yeah.
And this is why we'd like to come back, so that we can finish these programs,
Yeah,
finish these projects.
I'm trying to answer that, and it was referenced earlier and kind of laughed at right now, but I really believe that for regions to make something a priority, you got to have a majority of folks who are gonna do the work to push that agenda, make it move. And
But you're the chair, and you set the agenda.
I've been the chair this year.
Yeah, so have you,
Right,
but we've talked
and-
about this 4 years ago, about making sure that community colleges wants a lot, given the importance that it really deserves. And that hasn't seemed to be the case. And when was the last time you did a site visit for a community college?
I guess it depends what you would consider a site visit.
I'm not talking
but-
about the Board of Regents
Yeah,
meeting. I'm
yeah.
talking you went because you wanted to go learn. We do site visits. We went to LCC, we went to KCC, we went to Maui Community College, we went to Kauai Community College, how many have you done?
Like those, none. Yeah, just.
Yeah, but when we spoke, you were gonna make it a priority.
Yeah. It's clear for me that I do feel like I've made these issues a priority. I'm still a champion for community colleges.
But you gotta lead with your feet, you gotta show up, you gotta understand what's going on there. If not, how do you go to the Board of Regents and say, look, I visited there and this is what I saw? And this is what I feel needs to happen. I don't find there's real skin in the game or any real follow-through.
So it seems like my position is not, popular, and the senators, this is part of the process. And so if that's the approach that the Senate wants from regents, then I'm probably not the guy, because my approach is different. I believe, and a lot of the work that I've done is to try to help regents collectively step into that role of accountability. I was a lead actor in reworking the committees so that regions had more voice and more position. This is probably the first time since I've been there that every region has a critical role. They're chairing a committee or liaison posts. So the way I'm approaching what you're talking about, because I don't disagree, is just that I need to build a regent culture where we collectively do that lift. I'm not interested in being the
But you
one
could lead
guy.
by example.
I went to the community college and I did this.
But you
think
could lead by example.
Yeah, but I think my example is the example that gets things done in the long run.
You don't think showing up to a community college would already make an impression with that college?
I'm sure it would, but they don't need impressions.
Yeah, but how else do you get information?
I do meet and talk with folks from community colleges, faculty,
Look at
students.
facilities. I mean, that's part of the reason why this housing, no regent went to go look at the housing.
So I think the questions are fair.
You can't just only have board meetings.
I agree, and I don't.
And part of the board, you can set the agenda, it should be doing site visits. So you guys can see firsthand, because we get complaints. We get concerns sent to us. And a lot of people go and investigate.
So I
just go back to the fact that more than 50% are not going to four-year campuses. And who's going to be their advocate? Who's going to make sure that they're competitive in this global society? I get I hear what you're saying. I want to build collaboration between the regions, but is that your role, or is it really who's going to be the champion of those over 50% that need some fighting chance to be competitive in this world?
I stand by what I wrote in my responses, and what I'm saying now is that for regions to hold administration accountable, then regents have to do it. And so the priority I've made since I became the chair is to build a regent culture, and particularly because we have new regents and they're willing to put in more time and energy. And it's why we are doing site visits, that we're building that expectation and that culture of doing those kinds of things.
Okay, I just got to tell you though, From WAM site visits, we've introduced a whole bunch of legislation because we showed up. We went to Kalaupapa, we tried to understand the situation, we introduced the bill. I mean, I can go on and on about the great work of the committee by showing up, understanding, learning the situation, and trying to problem solve. Not just listening to the administration. Anyway, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Senator Favela, can I just make one comment before I let you have it? I just want to say that the legislature have introduced measures raising concerns on this issue, like the community college going directly to the Board of Regents. And it behooves me to hear you say that with the support of the legislature, you folks address tenure and classifications. I was berated and continue to be berated because I've raised all of this. And you folks went kicking and screaming and never really supported some of this stuff. So I really take issue to that. So Senator Favela.
I had a lot of questions, but I think I'm just gonna go with this one for now. Senator De La Cruz was trying to make an awareness, and you're not taking it as an awareness, because when you hold somebody accountable, like how when we try to do this, when we're doing the administration here, the budget is all we have. And you have the budget, and I understand. So if you vote on your budget, if you vote no and the rest of the regions vote yes, does the budget fail?
No.
Okay. So you wasn't understanding what he was saying. If you didn't agree, you didn't think the thing was pono, yeah, then why go with it? Be that voice for the people, for the students, for the people out there that having faith in you saying what you're doing. Because what you're telling him, that's in your questionnaire, what bothers me is you don't think that it's a necessity to go there because precedents. I don't want to say precedents. I don't want to say I. We're not telling you that. What he was telling you, what all of us here, is just to care. Maybe you're saying our perspective, but your actions speak louder than your words. Because you wouldn't be telling that to any of us about being perspective. I went there, I did this, I went that. I'm going to tell you, no. You can come with a collaboration as a leader. And this is what was told to me at the colleges. Can we work on this as regents? That's how you collaborate. But not telling Senator De La Cruz that the perspective is you go in there and you're going to say, I, me. It has nothing to do with that. Yeah, so for me, I just kind of disturbed that when to me, when I heard him, and I'm sitting here on the side, listening to all my colleagues, they have great concerns, and so do I have here. But all I was hearing Senator De La Cruz was giving you encouragement, and you wasn't taking it as encouragement. You was saying that, oh, if that's what the legislator is, then I'm not your guy.
Senator Favela, you have a question?
The question is, why say those things? Well, why say those things? If you're in a position that we're asking to, not saying that we all right in corrections, or we're not all right, but why say that to the answering the questions that he was, okay, well, I like your questions and everything, but if you want me to do them that way, I'm not your guy. Why say that to the response? You could say, I try, I'm going to try, I'm going to look into them, but you just came out and said, I'm not your guy. Why? That's what I like to know.
Because I'm honest.
Oh, what part of that? What is that?
Because and if I don't think, I said many times that I think Senator De La Cruz's points are well taken, and there's a lot of areas where I agree, and there's some areas I disagree.
Right.
And in particular, it's the approach that me as an individual can go around and meet with folks and come back and say, I heard this. One thing I know for sure about the university is that you cannot pick any topic where there isn't a multitude of perspectives. So what happens is if a regent goes somewhere and meets with one person and comes back and says, I met with this person and here's what's going on, without doing their due diligence, the first thing that's going to happen when you start talking is the 10 other people who have different perspective are going to jump up and say, how come we never talked to us? And so I prefer a more methodological approach to hearing from all the perspectives on any issue, so that regions can say, look, this is what's going on. And we can be, what I really agree about what Senator De La Cruz is saying is regions have an important oversight role. And to do that role appropriately, you need to have the information. You got to understand the budget. You got to go, I even agree we have to go do site visits. I just don't like doing that on my own. Because if we had 11 regions going all over the state of Hawaii, coming back with different perspectives, it's going to be total chaos.
Then organize a site visit.
I think that's what we're doing now.
Just to follow up. So what I'm trying to say is you want to hold the administration accountable. You want to do all of these things to show that your perspective. The Senator De La Cruz had asked you, then why did you vote for the budget if you had concern? Not because you want to be a good player. I will tell you why. Let me finish. Because many of times I visit other communities of other my colleagues here, and I have my perspective of what's happening in their community. I come and share with them with that. And even if they don't see my perspective, I still vote no. If I don't agree, I vote no. So that's what you could have, should have, would have done, but you didn't. You did it because you thought you was collaborating and you was working. You can never work with an administration that has so much chaos before you came there. Cannot. And how you gonna clean them up? Is you gotta work together with your regions and the community. And that's all I get for now, Chair.
Model.
Senator, Kirani, do you have a question? No. Okay, so let me go. So, Chair, you talked about, when Senator De La Cruz looking at the budget, that you do by project by project. So I have several projects that I've been raising concerns about, and I really haven't seen you folks take discussions or have discussions about those projects. For example, the Cancer Center. You know, this is one area which is going to cost the university a lot of money because the business plans don't seem to be financially sound. And I know you mentioned in your responses about being financially sound as one of your move towards a more financially sound and autonomous institution. So when this cancer clinical trials came before you for action, were you aware that the Cancer Center had been running a deficit?
Yes.
Okay, so when they said that the Cancer Center intended to fund the remaining portion of the project using its reserve funds, you know that they don't have reserve funds?
I'm not aware of that.
So how can you say you're aware of the running deficit and when they say they're going to use reserve funds and there's no reserve funds? Did you even ask that question about?
I didn't, and I'll reiterate, I actually do have a lot of faith in our admin and in our VP team.
So your basis for support is that you have a lot of faith in them?
No, my point is that I don't question every single thing that comes in front of us, that I take some things for face value.
Okay.
I do think, for me, I think the Cancer Center is critical to Hawaii's well-being, and we need to find a way for it to work.
Okay, so did you even read the Warbird study that was paid for by UH?
I did not read the study.
Okay, which spoke against creating and starting clinical trials. Did you read the Board of Regents plan or review of the business plan of the Cancer Center clinical trials?
I did, although, again, I'll be honest, reading the material list we have, I pick and choose which things to dive deeper into, depending on which items I think are critical to understand, and that's not one that.
Okay, so the Cancer Center review or Cancer Center update, this one right here, February 3rd, 2022, was actually requested by Regent Higaki. And it was after his confirmation hearing where he talked about doing all kinds of things. And this whole issue on Cancer Center came up, and why haven't the regents really looked into this? So he requested this, it was done, the report came out. So what did you guys do with the report? Was it ever on the agenda? Did you guys ever discuss it?
I don't believe so.
So you folks get a report, you go through this, you have all these people, and they tell you that these concerns, there's a lot of concerns with the Cancer Center and costs, and you supported it, and you didn't review it. And so what happens to this whole thing about moving in a more financial responsible way? If you're not going to read the reports and you're not going to hear that there are concerns and there are whole issues regarding the funding, where is the funding going to come from?
For the Cancer Center, I can't answer that question.
Again, that's what concerns me, concerns, I think, members of the committee, that you're not aware of these things. I mean, we have to, I don't only chair the Higher Education Committee, I sit on education, I sit on Ways and Means, I sit on EET. So we have the whole state that we have to, and we question everything, or not everything, but we try to, within our realm. You just have the University of Hawaii, and it's a big thing, but these are major issues, and I keep raising it, and I keep sending the regents, and I send it either sometimes individually to all of you, sometimes I send it as a whole to the Board of Regents, so that you cannot say that we didn't raise these concerns. And yet it doesn't go on the agenda, because I check, I watch, I don't hear any of this being discussed. We had the whole hearing on the Cancer Center, you weren't there. All of these issues were raised. So I don't know why we would get a study and pay for a study. Why would the Board of Regents ask for a report that you folks don't read, and you don't analyze, or you don't discuss, and yet you comment and you say, oh, we do the funding project by project. But this is a major project and you don't know, so how can you make that statement that you review it project by project?
Is that a question?
Yeah.
What I mean is when we ask for things to be presented or they come in front of us, that's when we focus on that project. The Cancer Center is not one that I've been focused on.
But it did come before you and you supported it.
Yeah, I believe the Cancer Center is important for Hawaii, and that we have to find a way. The clinical trials, I think there's different opinions about whether it would work or not work.
Well, it's not opinions. These are studies that was done, that you folks paid for and asked for. So it's not opinions.
I also don't feel like clinical trials are only for the money. I think the Cancer Center is critical for research, for services to community members, and the point about its financial viability is important.
I agree with you, but at the end of the day, somebody's got to pay, right? Somebody's got
Yes.
to pay for it. It's got to come from someplace. So that's all we want to know. Where is it going to come from? Because right now, the Cancer Center itself, the tobacco funds is not enough for it to be able to be sound. So they're in a deficit, okay? So, and then now they're embarking on the early clinical trials, which is, they've been claiming it's going to be self-sustaining, but all the reports and everything we've got says no. So if that's the case, where is the funding and where's the commitment by the Board of Regents to it? Because in this year's budget, you folks don't have anything for Cancer Center.
Correct.
So again, if that's a priority, where is the priority? But Field was a priority. You folks funded it in full and you rushed it through despite all of these other issues. So I have a hard time reconciling what the priorities are and what you folks tell us, because it doesn't seem to jive. And where the money's going to come from, because obviously the money to build Field came out of the student housing, or our RIM came out of RIM. Atherton came out of student housing, and that's another project by project. You know, when you folks voted for Atherton, it didn't pencil out. And the proof is in the pudding, because Calvert had to change that project 2 times to get it to pencil out, but you guys supported it. Did you ever re-review it? the project? Because what they proposed to you and what they ended up doing was not the same project.
Yeah. We've been tracking Atherton all the way through, and
So you know that there's a sublease?
yes,
So why would the university get the lease and then sublease it back to the foundation?
because these projects, you know, they're living, breathing things, and, you know, a lot of things impact projects as they move along.
Well, that doesn't
inflation
answer the
rates.
question. So the foundation leases to the University of Hawaii the project Atherton, the pink building, and then we sublease it back to the foundation. $250,000. Why would we be sandwiched in between that when Calvert keeps telling us we have nothing to do with Atherton? That doesn't sound to me. Okay. Senator-
Sorry, so, I just I'm just gonna go to what I had. We kind of off the rails for a little. I get a concern, when I was watching the news and, you know, we had, President Lasner got into an accident, on, I guess it was New Year's Eve or whatever. As a region chair, were you concerned about the incident and did you discuss this with President Lasner?
I did, yes. And I'm always concerned for public safety, you know, and the safety of our employees, but also for any issues that would have arisen, you know, from you know, his involvement.
So did you know that that the UH resources of the UH spokesperson to be given a statement to the media, making the UH matter that the region had asked about, that the UH spokesperson?
Just to understand the question, did I know
Okay,
that?
let me
Yeah.
redo them again. Do you think using resources or for the UH spokesperson to give in a statement to the media, this makes this the UH matter that the region should have asked about? And have you not have consulted with the UH general consultant counsel about this? Because if this is a private matter, like how everybody said, then why do we have a spokesperson from the university speaking on behalf of a private citizen that got into a private accident on a private New Year's Eve?
I think, you know, positions like that, I don't know that the president is ever, you know, not the president. And so, I think I said, like, one of my jobs is to be a champion, advocate, and protector of the university. And so I think one of the roles of the communications team is to, you know, be on top of things that could harm the university. That's not the same thing as misrepresenting the facts. And so I think.
But can I interject?
Yeah.
But when the media asked him the question of whether or not he was drinking, he said it's a personal, again, the communication person told the media it was a personal matter, but it's no longer personal, right? If it's using the UH, what was it? The UH communication person.
I'll be honest, I didn't consider it. You know, I'm willing to consider that.
Well, again, you know, this whole thing on accountability, it's like, I would think the regions would want to know, right? And if you're using UH resources, I assume it's the UH communication person. I don't know for sure, but I would assume because somebody's made those statements.
Yeah.
And unless the president has his own personal non-UH communication person making these statements.
Well, when the press calls, they're calling UH, you know, that is it true that the president, right? They don't call and ask if it's true that David Lasner, so they're asking for a response.
Right, so the communication
Yeah.
person should say, you need to talk to the president himself, David Lasner, and not make a statement, right?
Yeah.
I mean, why would he make a statement? Why would he make a statement to the media
I-
that night when he got into the accident, when it wasn't even working hours?
Yeah, I hear the point. I think it's worth thinking about.
Okay. Anybody else? I have a number of questions. Okay. Go ahead, Senator Kiban. So then that leads me to this whole issue that you brought up about accountability, holding the administration accountable. And you talk a lot about accountability in your response. So how have you specifically, because you give us no specifics, how have you specifically held the administration accountable?
I think that's, in some of my opening framing is, it depends what you consider accountable. I think that if someone breaks the law or violates contract, then there's a clear level of response. Then there's issues that are, subjective, like, do you agree with the decision? And,
But isn't that the role of the regents?
I
mean,
agree,
you-
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I mean.
And so, since I joined the Regents, I have individually been very assertive with pretty much every member of the administration directly. Like, that I have no problem expressing areas that I feel like need improvement, or I didn't, I think that response was too thin. I also say those things on the record. And so, for me, that's a level of individual accountability, as an individual regent. I care more about us holding the university and administration to improving. And that starts with holding myself accountable for being the best regent I can be. A lot of the things being shared today are things that I will reflect deeply on if I have a chance to serve further, and how can I improve. But I also believe that regents have much better role at holding admin accountable when we are together. Right? And so one of the things that happened to me as a new regent was, it's pretty clear that 1, 2, 3 regents can have any opinion they want. It doesn't change anything. What changes things is if you have a majority of regents, and ideally a supermajority of regents, that are saying this is the direction we're headed. And that's the focus I've made around accountability.
Well, to me, that's a fallacy, because if we waited till we had a majority or whatever, we would never get anything done, or we wouldn't have bring any issues up. So, accountability, and I looked this up, is the practice of being held to a certain standard of excellence. And where there's no accountability, there's no responsibility. And, lack of accountability means there's no stability in the organization. So,
Can I answer that?
yes.
Okay. Pretty much every issue that's been raised for me today existed before I got here. Right? So if all it took was that, it would have happened already. I'm very confident that the regents are better positioned now than they've been in a long time to play the role of overseer. And so the things that I write in there, that's not soft stuff. I've had a pretty accomplished career. So I'm fundamentally disagreeing with the notion that my role as regent is to pound the table and out people. I believe my role as regent is to help regents come to positions that they can collectively say, this is the expectation, and we can hold you accountable to that. I know from experience as a regent, without that, it's just noise. Everybody wants to get a soundbite in, or they want to say they did something. That's not that meaningful to me.
Well, I can't see that there's been any specific accountability, but, and I'm going to have to use Regent Akitaki as an example. She inherited all of this stuff. She came in a couple months, she's done more to ask questions or to request certain things to get it done by herself. So it didn't take the whole regents to agree, but they did eventually. That's what you call leadership, right? And if you're talking about, having consensus and so forth, who did you consult when you proposed 5 men to sit on the pig for the selection of the president? To me, that doesn't seem like you had any kind of collaborative, but you use that when it's convenient. So let me just say this, that when the regents didn't publicly hold the president or the AD accountable for the football coach, Graham, at the time, I believe this led to a domino of effects. the fiasco of the football coach selection where June Jones had his character assassinated, and the person doing the assassination was not held accountable in any means. Then it led to the student athletic independent assessment to be tainted. The athletic director inserted himself into the process with no consequences when this was a Board of Regents process, and they're the one that got the assessment. And then it led to the president selecting a new athletic director without letting the regents meet the candidate before announcing it. And then he held the press conference after the regents asked him not to do it. So you see where there's no consequences, there's no accountability, that they continue to operate as normal and don't take them, I can't understand how this happens.
Is that a question?
Yeah, I mean, do you see that? I mean, without accountability, did these kind of events happen?
I actually see it differently.
Okay, how do you see it?
I think that the student safety issues are very important, that the coach is not with us anymore. And
Yeah, but it wasn't your guys' doing. It was the Senate that held the hearing that led to that, because Matlin said at that hearing, he had no intention of letting go the coach.
with all due respect, the legislature doesn't have the authority to get rid of the coach.
No, we
So,
didn't, but because we held the
coach
hearing.
is no longer with us.
Yeah, because we held the hearing, and we were criticized by the president that we cherry-picked, but because we held the hearing and heard from the athletes who had no place else to go, because they went to Matlin, the parents went to Matlin, they went to the president, they didn't feel that they had any recourse, they came to the legislature, and we held the informational hearing, which I don't believe you were at or on Zoom. At that meeting, the only one was there was Judge Okoba, who didn't say anything at the time. But it was the result of that that led to everything. And I know the administration pushed against having it put on the agenda to even discuss an athletic assessment, independent athletic assessment.
But it happened. So I guess, for me, I think these things take a lot of people, and I'm not going to discount the role the legislature played, but I certainly don't think that was the only thing that resulted in the outcome. I think regents weighed in, members of admin weighed in,
But there was
student
still no
athletes stepped forward through the whole
consequences.
process. I think the decision to get an external evaluator was a sound decision. I agree with you, it was unfortunate that there were members of admin in those hearings. The regents were very intense in questioning that decision and trying to ensure that the findings of the report, even though there was a concern with the interviews, were the findings substantive? I think that was the main part for us. Do we have an issue that needs to be dealt with right now, and what are the improvements we can make immediately? I think that's part of accountability. I think that regents weighed in heavily on their feelings about the athletic director selection process and whether or not, I don't think your recollection of what happened is accurate. I was there and in the room, and regents certainly expressed their displeasure with what happened,
Yeah,
but
but there were no
regents,
consequences.
but regents agreed with the selection, and we move. I think it feels to me, it really feels to me, like when we say accountability, we mean punishment.
Not
And for
necessarily.
me, and I'll stand by my writing, accountability to me is continuous improvement. Unless there is something that clearly we need to get into personnel issues, right? The people that, a lot of times, I get lots of complaints. One thing that's certain, if you take a role like this, is you get a lot of complaints from a lot of different perspectives.
We know that.
Correct, right? I can't just run off and validate every complaint I hear. I have to go through due process. Right? So I think the same thing is true for hiring an athletic director, getting rid of a coach. There's due process. It's not just, I discovered the right thing to do, let me go tell someone what to do. Right? Like I said to start off, if these issues were that simple to fix, they would have been fixed. My approach is to make sure the regents operate in a way where accountability can be increased. And I think that we're on that path. And with all due respect to Regent Akitake, the way I lead the Board of Regents and the way that we've structured committees makes it easier for her to call for those behaviors. And you mentioned this issue about me recommending I only named 5 men. I didn't even sit on the Community Action Group that recommended the process. So all I did was say, can we start off? I didn't lobby for votes. And I said in the public meeting, I think anybody could be on it. I don't think that there's an individual regent that's supposed to champion even a chair. All I did was say, let's have a starting position that's senior. Who's most senior? Start with that. And as soon as Regent Akitake mentioned that would be imbalanced, I completely agree with her.
But you didn't amend it when you went to the board. You didn't amend the list. You kept it as the 5 men.
No, we amended it.
You didn't amend it as a proposal as the chair.
I didn't need to because I have faith in the regents.
That's what you should.
Yeah, accountability.
Senator-
We
Senator
changed the makeup.
He actually just answered the question I was going to ask, but I'll ask another question. In the questionnaire that we gave you on question 8, you stated that student health and safety must be a primary concern. At the January 20th, 2023 Board of Regents meeting concerning the mental health and human element of the trust and comfort to the student athletes, you did not speak up or raise concerns to President Lasner or AD Matlin. Why is that?
So this is one that's personal to me, and I've spent much of my life fighting for the safety, well-being, academic success, life success of primarily at-risk youth and communities. I understand what it takes to do that. And that one in particular, I have a hard time when people try to make it as simple as, caring, right? That in order for us to take care of the well-being of our students, student athletes, first-generation students, students from low economic means, students from foster care system, right? It takes a lot more than saying it matters. Like you have to actually put the steps and procedures in place. You have to resource those interventions.
But you didn't even say that it matters. That's my concern, is that you were silent.
I feel like I've said it a lot. And again, I don't know that saying something in that setting actually gets well-being for our students. And in our new committee structure, we have, we have a committee focused on student success, talking with that committee about how do we as regents, what do we agendize to make it clear that this is the priority for regents, not just give us a presentation on what the current status is so they can just, show us what we want to see. How do we agendize a topic where we can dive deeper and actually, to Senator De La Cruz's point, move resources around if need be? How do we, for example, we talked about the athletics intervention for student well-being. If we're going to do that for athletics, how do we leverage that so it's available for other populations as well? Even though I didn't say it there, this is one, which is why I made a special mention of it. If I get to continue, this is one that will be top of mind for me. I also want to say on this topic, this is not the idea that UH is not a safe place for students, I think is really questionable. The world is not a safe place for students right now. Our schools aren't a safe place for students right now. Right? Like that, and what students need has grown exponentially over the generation. So if we really care about this, then we have to have a very thought through plan to address the emerging needs from, I appreciated the governor's designation for Hawaii as a trauma-informed state. We need trauma-informed trainings for our faculty and our coaches. This is not a light lift.
Alapaki, you say that, but again, in this Board of Regents meeting, you didn't support it.
Support but I misunderstand which agenda item we're talking about.
The Regent Mawai recommended establishing a PIG with specific duties to take a deeper examination
Oh.
of the issues surrounding UH Manoa athletics operations with respect to student athletes' welfare and communications. But you did not support it in the board meeting.
Yeah, my position then, I'm hoping it's in the minutes, is I thought we'd actually get more attention via having it as a regular committee item. And I just talked to Chair Tochiki about that, like that's not what happened. Choosing a committee approach meant they could schedule it regular meetings, it would be out in the open, all the regions could be weighing in. I just asked her if she thinks we made a mistake there, but that's an approach preference. To do a permitted action group versus handling it on the committee meeting, I think is just which way do we want to handle it?
So is there a current discussion in the board?
The current discussion is not discussion, it's going to be agendized on Student Success Committee, where I trust, the Chair Tochiki to decide if they want to make a PIG or just try to make it a regular agenda item.
Okay, I'm gonna switch.
Sure.
Oh, Senator Favela.
Okay, so if anybody been watching, hopefully you was, I have a problem with Ching Stadium. Yeah. So you were asked to form for the NCAA to 15,000 people in Division I. You was asked to, why were you against NCAA, doing the NCAA waiver for the Ching Stadium?
I wouldn't say I was against the waiver. I was for resolving the issue. And I felt like we had it in our means to resolve this issue for the foreseeable future.
Okay, the reason why I say that is, when they first was constructing this stadium, was supposed to be for a temporary stadium. The items that was coming to out of the procurement and all of that, right? The procurement had changed, or the price tag had changed, but the procurement process didn't go back. So the scope was totally changed from temporary, that was the scope, to permanent, and then the price tag also went changed. At that time, I don't know if you had a say, but you didn't think that it should have went to procurement? And why did President Lasner have the last say on spending this extra money? And now we're on the hook to expand some more of Ching Stadium. So why wasn't it go back to procurement if the scope has drastically changed for a temporary space to permanent?
I think it went, if I can correct that, I think it went from doing just the turf to then building the
Yeah, that's what- yeah,
bleachers,
that's what I mean, yeah.
building the bleachers
Yeah.
and building all the suites.
Right.
And they used the same contractor.
Yeah.
Instead of going, because it was new, and the scope had changed, that they violated the procurement code by using the same contractor who did the turf, who knew nothing about doing the bleachers
Right.
and so forth. And then there was an accident and somebody died.
The reason why I asked that is because even if we had changed the scope from the turf to the bleachers, why didn't the region have more of a role in not only public safety, but the people working there, and the safety and continuing of our people that's going to be attending over there? First of all, I just like to know, were you there when this had happened, from the turf to the bleachers?
The regions did vote to approve the budget to expand the stadium. Some of the accusations being made are very serious. And if that's the position, then we should go and investigate those. If procurement was violated, let's go investigate that. If safety was, then we.
Now, the reason why I'm saying this, since you're saying this, I don't know if you've been watching our hearings. President Lasner said he made the decision to change it for the betterment of the university. So that's why I'm asking you. I'm not saying allegations or that. He said it in the meeting that he made the decision, not the regent. He made the decision for the university. Now, who's paying for it? He's gone. He's leaving. He made that call in the meeting, said that he made the decision to change the scope, to spend the extra money, and bypass the procurement. And you know why? Because he's the procurement person.
Chief Procurement Officer.
Yeah, the procurement officer. So he told that to us. That's the reason why I asked, and you said, yeah, you guys would get together, and you guys agreed, and you guys voted for it. He did not say that when I asked the question. He said he did it as the president, as the chancellor, and the procurement person, all in one, said was he made the decision for the betterment of the university, bypassed all you guys.
My apologies, Senator. I think I misunderstood. I
Yeah.
think we approved the overarching budget, but not that change in the
Yeah.
scope of the contract.
But didn't you think to question?
I have not questioned that.
So, for the turf, do you remember what was the estimated cost for the procurement going on for the turf?
Apologize, I don't remember.
It's about $1 million. Change of the scope went probably about $6 million over. You don't think that's a big drastic change that the region should have had an input on?
I don't think you folks even had an input on it because they used RIM money. Did you guys approve RIM money? No.
Yeah, I don't remember. That did not come to Regents, and so.
But I guess the bigger question you might be asking is that should the president be chief procurement officer? And I know we've had a bill several years running now on that issue because we could not find any other president in any other university that's chief procurement officer, and yet the regents took no position in pushing that or seeing that or opining that that would be the right thing to do. Because in this case, and I think what Senator Favela was referring to in the meeting, when we asked him about, as a chief procurement officer, should they have violated the procurement code, and it was found by by OSHA or DCCA, that they did in fact had violated the procurement code. And he said, well, he had to do what is in the best interest of the university, which the comment we made was that, but therein lies the problem. There's a conflict. Yes, you got to do as president what's best for the university, then you shouldn't have on the procurement hat. Because in the procurement hat, you got to follow the procurement code, right? But again, this issue is never raised again by the regents. I guess you felt it was not important.
Yeah,
to
I apologize.
discuss it.
I missed this specific detail, and
The budget you did approve was the additional funding to do Phase 2 of Chingfield.
correct.
I remember I was watching that hearing. And at that hearing, I believe it was Regent Lee that proposed, before spending the money, because we had a possible stadium coming up, and before doing that, shouldn't we go and ask the NCAA for a waiver so that we could use either Stan Sheriff or Murakami Stadium, because they've done that, allowed other universities to do that, instead of spending the money, and you not only didn't support it, you spoke against it, if I recall correctly, and I think I have it down here in the minutes.
I did.
In light of all of the issues that we had money-wise, you
Yeah,
chose not to go and get a waiver? Why?
what I commented on at that meeting, and I'll stand by it, is that I get, like I said, a lot of complaints, a lot of calls. calls I've gotten the most are on Mauna Kea and Hawaii football. And, I wouldn't say personally that athletics is my priority as a regent, but it was certainly made clear to me that Hawaii Warrior football matters to this community. And if you're gonna have a D1 football team, then we should act like a D1 program. And we were put into a situation where we don't have a field to play in with virtually no notice. And I don't think it's fair for that program to be living in the lurch. And so the admin team found a way for us to secure the what it would take to be a credible D1 program, and that's the decision we made collectively as regents. And I know not everybody agrees with that, but I'm at least happy that the program feels confident that they got a compliant field to play on.
Well, I agree with you that not everybody's going to agree, but as a regent looking after the best interests of the university, and the university is there first and foremost for students, first and foremost for learning. And yes, we have a football program and we have sports, and I certainly support it. And you had the 10,000 Ching Field already there. It wasn't even full. And the whole purpose of building the 15,000 additional 5,000 seats was to satisfy NCAA. And NCAA could give a waiver. The fact that that waiver wasn't even asked for first to figure out whether or not, and then figure out the options. Well, what are our options? Do we want to do this and wait for the stadium, or do we want to now build anyway the 5,000? And the fact that you didn't even bother to wait for those options and just plowed along at what cost?
We did talk about all those options, and it was, the opinion, that's all that they are, is that we were unlikely to get the waiver because we had gotten a COVID, exemption. We did talk in detail about how else could these funds be used. Part of the concern for me is that Hawaii football is the only, net revenue positive male sport. And with the number of athletes, it's what allows us to have so many of our female sports. So it's not, for me, it's not just supporting the football program, it's about the purpose of athletics in higher ed. And
But what harm would it have been to ask if we could get a waiver or not, so that you could give your regents the opportunity to really know all the facts before making a commitment of that kind of funds for temporarily 5,000 more seats, which then you had to move the field.
Yeah.
Football doesn't have a place to practice. There's no practice field. The soccer team, I understand, have problems because they don't have a field. So this led to a whole domino effect that affected all of the athletes at the university, not just football.
yeah, I don't remember, we did talk about the challenge with the
I watched that
waiver.
hearing, and I have the minutes from that hearing, and you did not have that full discussion.
We did talk about the waiver,
did
and
talk
I can't remember what the opinion was, but there was some issues with, it wasn't like, oh, ask and just wait. There was some consequences that I can't recall at this time. I apologize.
Okay, anybody else? Senator Hashimoto?
So I guess I'll ask the same question that I asked Regent Akitaki. What do you believe should happen to the UH president's position in terms of, do you believe it should stay the Chancellor of Manoa? As a neighbor islander, do you feel that that we truly have a system president, or do you think changes need to be made?
It's interesting. It's one of the first things I had to vote on as a new regent, and it had been kind of like limping along for years. And I remember what I said when I voted for it at the time. It's like, there's so many factors, and it's a pretty complex decision. And what I felt at the time was that it's not that, I think there's pros and cons either way. So the issue is, whatever we're gonna do, you have to do it correctly. We made that choice, and I think there have been some positives about it. At this point, and it's gonna sound like that it's going to reinforce what I said before. It's clear to me that the collective regents, the vast majority of regents, believe it should be separated. So I would rather make that option work and focus on what are the best benefits of that option. There are some consequences we're going to have to mitigate. Personally, I love the idea of having a system president that's focused on the system, especially as a neighbor island resident. I do think that there's a Manoa-centric approach to the university and that this should help. But it depends on who we choose to be a system president. The case that was made to me previously, and I still think it's true, is that Manoa has a lot of gravity. And so what's happened in the past is the system president gets sucked into a lot of Manoa things. But that's something regions need to do, is to make sure the system president is accountable to the whole system. And we're actually doing some things to better position the counties. So to force the university to have a county level plan, or even regional plan, like what is the West Oahu approach for the system? I think that's going to help us with the community college conversation as well.
What are the pros? What are the pros of keeping it?
There was a lot of efficiency. I mean, President Lasner is severely underpaid in terms of the industry. So it's likely that position price is going to go up. If we look at the chancellor position and replacing that as its own, right, you're talking about recruiting for that position. So there's a cost just on the positions alone. There were some efficiencies to running the offices together, having a whole system office and a whole Manoa office, which is some of the things we're looking at already, like in terms of if we're going to go this approach, because regions have already noted for the record that they want the positions separated so that when we recruit, we can be clear to the candidates. That's what's going to happen. So I feel like it's a done deal. We just have to actually make the official vote and then on the process.
But as regents, what have you, over your 4 years, what have you done to make sure that the president is focusing on the system? Because I think, you say there's pros and cons, that's great, but I think as regents, you kind of got to make it work either way.
Yeah.
So even if you change it and you as regents aren't keeping it accountable as a system, as you said, you can get sucked into to Manoa.
Yeah.
What have been the mitigating factors of trying to keep the system focused? Because I think when I take a look at, especially on the neighbor islands, when I take a look at workforce development, I get very concerned because everything is controlled by Manoa, right? And so there's things like teaching and like nursing that they refuse to develop in other areas because they don't want to take away from Manoa, right? And so I think there has to be some type of strategy from the regions to make sure that, especially in areas of workforce development where they're critically needed, that you're going to make sure that it can happen, right? It's because right now it's becoming a barrier for students to go to Manoa, especially if you're on Maui, Molokai, Big Island. If you look at UH Hilo, there's some things that they don't even offer, and you got to go to Manoa.
Yes.
Right? And so I'd like to know what is the strategy from the region's perspective on making sure that we stay focused, that we truly are a UH system and just not a Manoa-centric campus.
This is, to me, a really core issue for the university to become what we need it to be, because we're very campus-oriented. And so when we're assessing what's going to be at Kauai Community College, right, it's not really how does Kauai Community College support Kauai County, and how do we deliver our full system of programming and supports to Kauai via that campus. But
what has the regions done in the past years to make that happen?
Beyond like individual advocacy, there hasn't been much until recently. So what we've just pivoted to is that when we go away from Manoa to have our meetings, we have regional meetings, not campus meetings. And we kind of had some trial runs, and then we had our first major one in Hilo this last meeting. So instead of going to UH Hilo, we were at UH Hilo, but it was UH Hilo and Kauai Community College chancellors presenting for the island. And so we actually did tours together of like the ag park, both community college and UH Hilo's pieces. The data we got was data about where Hawaii County is at. And our premise is that that structure is going to allow us to dive deeper into these things. So if we're going to talk about ag on Hawaii Island, Hawaii Island Ag doesn't care if it's coming from Manoa or Ichila. They want to know, they want to say what's important to them, what they need, and they want an answer from how the system is going to deliver it. So that's an example, like we're not there yet, but we have re-pivoted the meeting so that we can at least have those conversations, and we're demanding of administration to give us the data at that level, including who are you collaborating with, not UH Hilo campus, UH system, what business partnerships do we have, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not, we're not there yet, but I think we're in the right direction.
Well, I think, I think it's great that you have some direction. I think you got to keep the focus, because I think at the end of the day, I think we look at Manoa, and enrollment is fine in Manoa, but I think
Yes.
you got to look at everywhere else, because enrollment is not fine in other places,
Correct.
right? And if we continue looking at Manoa as the standard, I think there's a bigger system than just Manoa, right? And so I think the regents need to really keep focused on how you're going to move forward and what is the bigger strategy in keeping the whole system together, right? So I think that has to be continually to be the focus. So thank you, Chair.
I agree.
Senator Kidani.
Yes, thank you. Malapaki, were you aware of the plight of the grad students' claims regarding fair compensation and workload, which manifested in their pursuit of unionizing?
Yes.
And,
What have you folks done? What has the Regents done?
yeah, so what's the position of the regents? Have they,
Regent did not take a position. And this is like, there's several legal issues that when you join Regents, right, there's a list of cases, and this is one that's been ongoing, and it's across the country, right? Like this is so I would say that I'm trying to be cautious just because it's still something in litigation, right? That there's a lot of conversation about this issue and all the different impacts, right? The recent ruling has just come out, and so we're talking about, well, how do we honor the law in that space? Individual regents have certainly opined their individual positions, but the collective regents did not move from the position I inherited, which was not to recognize them as employees.
So what led to, from what I've been told by the grad students, is that they have asked for fair compensation. They have asked for better control over their workload because professors will load them up, and they can't complain against the professors because they're their boss, so they get retaliated against. And they've gone to President Lasner, and he hasn't been made available to meet with them. And when they finally caught him at the graduation, he said, yes, we're going to do it, and then he didn't do any of that. So without, notwithstanding this whole legal issue, what has the Regents done to, again, hold the president accountable for the plight of the graduate assistants, and, what are some of their concerns, and is there something within the administration themselves that can deal with this issue without them having to resort to going and being unionized? Because this has been going on for, 4 years now, that they've come to the ledge for a law?
Yeah. I guess I'm gonna, it reminds me a lot of the student athlete and the NIL issues, and that I certainly think for this one, UH could stand alone in its approach to graduate students, but there is a kind of like a higher ed, industry standard that the university has been kind of tracking. And so basically for regents and the university to take a different approach would be to not follow the guidelines of, across the country, is my understanding.
Well, it's not following the guidelines or going across, it's meeting with the president and having an agenda item to ask the president, how are you dealing with some of the concerns that's been raised by the graduate students? Do they have any valid issues that you guys should be aware of?
I'm not aware of that request to the president, but grad students have come to many board meetings
So
making their case.
Again, we can only hold the regents accountable by what you have discussed and what you have in your meetings. And I know some of us try to watch the meetings. If we don't, we read the minutes. I look through the minutes. I do the due diligence, check up on all this stuff, because they come to us. And we don't want to get in the middle of this labor issue, but, you know, we talk about being fair, about our students' health and welfare, and yet here you have a group of students that are being utilized, and don't get me started on this whole workload issue, because the workload issue at Manoa is only 49% of instructional time. The rest of the time is delegated out for all kinds of other things, including buying it out or allowing the grant assistants to take over their workload. So it's a big issue about workload and who's teaching the students, who's actually in the classroom teaching the students who are paying good money for tuition. And then you get the people that are substituting for these professors in the classroom, and they don't feel that they're being treated equally or properly and compensated. Now, I'm not going to be the one to decide what that compensation should be, because they get tuition waivers. But the whole issue about the conditions on which they are given workload, who's monitoring it, making sure that they're being treated fairly by the people who are giving them the assignments, those are all issues that, belong with the regents, because they are Board of Regents employees. Right? And, a lot of them have written testimonies because they're concerned. And again, they come to us and we got to hold you guys accountable. And, whether you agree or not, I think the question is whether or not you're even holding the meetings, because you talked about doing due diligence. One way we do due diligence is by having public hearings. That's why we had the hearing on the coach. We didn't make a decision. We weren't there to decide whether he'd be fired or not. But as a result of that hearing, there were things that occurred. And that's all we're asking of the regents, for you folks to hold hearings or do some forum to allow discussion to occur so that the administration can be held accountable to do some of these things, or maybe not do some of these things,
The grad student issue is tricky because, it was in litigation, so we have limited options.
But it took a while to get to litigation. I mean, if we had dealt with them, the administration had dealt with them more fairly, I don't know that it would have gone that far.
Possibly,
Right?
yeah.
Okay, let me ask you about, when you accepted the position of CEO at Iole, did you believe that you created a conflict of interest for yourself and for the University of Hawaii?
I believe that conflicts could have arisen, which is why I sought guidance on how to manage those.
How soon did you seek this guidance after you were, where you got the position as CEO?
I can't remember the exact date, but I think I sought the guidance as soon as it was clear that UH was going to be appointing board members onto the organization. So then it wouldn't be just normal conflict. It would be, just more involved.
So let me see if I understand this correctly. So when you were hired as the CEO, UH didn't have members on the board?
Correct.
And when did that come about?
I don't remember the exact date. I mean, I could go get it for you, but
Because there's very little online that I could find to get information on when all of these things started. So according to your questionnaire, you said that you called ethics.
correct.
And you spoke with them, you had 2 phone conversations with them.
Yes.
So why didn't you ask for a written formal opinion?
Yeah, I thought the guidance was pretty clear.
Were there any witnesses to that?
No.
So there's no witnesses, and their opinion was clear in what? I'm still not clear as to.
So one of the dynamics that was happening was that ASU is also on that board, and their president was going to sit on the board, and so there was a desire to have President Lasner to also sit on the board as president to president, but ethics was clear that they thought that would be an unmanageable conflict for me to be on David's board and him to be on mine, and so I believe they gave both me and UH that guidance that was not acceptable, which was fine. And they also had me have or had Iole have a separate point of contact for if UH wanted to do projects at Iole, that they would work with someone separate from me.
So David was originally appointed to the board because
No,
everything
he was
I
considered,
saw
be
his name
appointed.
on the board. And then my understanding is he asked Basilis Ceramos to substitute for him.
that's not correct. David never sat on the board. He's on the board now, because once I left, that opening,
Then how did Mr. Ceramos,
he was the original appointed person.
I spoke with him. I asked him the question and he said he was asked to sit because of this ruling, or not even a ruling, I guess, a guidance, that David asked him to sit
Correct,
on it. So it was him and Bonnie Owen.
Correct.
So they're both appointed by the president. So how does that remove you from the conflict?
because I'm not their direct supervisor, which was the main concern at the time.
Well, but then any funding from UH has to be approved by the Board of Regents.
For Iole,
Yes.
correct.
So that's a conflict,
No funding was provided.
but there's a possible conflict. So did you,
Right, so the ethics said, if this were to come in front of the board, you need to recuse yourself, which is pretty straightforward practice.
did you notify the chair of the Board of Regents of this possible conflict?
Correct, yes,
You did?
yes.
And the board chair was Mr. Crudo?
At the time was Mr. Moore.
Okay. And did you disclose this publicly to avoid appearance of impropriety? Did you disclose the conflict publicly or to the rest of your board members?
I did not.
But isn't that part of your board conflict of interest policy that you disclose publicly?
I guess I don't. It was not clear that a conflict existed, that I didn't have a conflict myself, that the mitigation we took didn't create a conflict, right? It mitigated a conflict.
But the fact that two key members of the UH is on your board is not a conflict or a perceived conflict, appearance of impropriety, appearance. I mean, it's still appointed by the president, these two individuals. So it could be deemed that by supporting all of the administrations and not voting no on anything, that you could be currying favor with the administration. One, that could be perceived. Two, were you in the evaluation of the president? Did you participate in the evaluation of the president?
Yes,
And so that could perceive that you should have recused yourself because you did so while you were CEO of Iole.
what was I'm not sure what the conflict is.
The conflict is that he, as the president, appoints, even if he's not sitting per se, he appoints Bonnie Owen as well as Vasilis, is his vice president's appointees, and you're evaluating the president, so there's a conflict, possible conflict there, which you didn't announce to your members or make them know, but in the Board of Regents conflict of interest policy and your fiduciary responsibility is spelled out here. It says the regent's personal financial interest defined under Chapter 84, any regent of knowledge, anyway, it goes on about, and the board sets your salary of your OLE. And that any questions or anything regarding the conflicts should be made known to your members and should be made publicly.
Possible.
But you didn't do any of that. I just cannot square why you wouldn't get a written, to cover yourself, why wouldn't you get a written opinion from ethics?
I've already stated, I thought the guidance was clear. And as I also mentioned, the fact that my term was ending and that it was unclear if I was going to continue was one of the things that are we mitigating for a short period or for an extended period, was one of the topics we talked
So
about.
were you told that they wouldn't recommend you signing on and being for another term with the regents and still being Iole?
No,
They didn't give you any of that guidance?
no.
You didn't ask?
Well, I didn't ask that because that wasn't the question was, what are the potential conflicts and can they be mitigated? And then if not, then I have to make a choice one way or the other. So because EOLA was a new nonprofit and things were under development, how much university decided to be part of the project would kind of change some of the dynamics. So I don't say we mutually agreed, but the conversation was, these are the things you should put into place to make sure that we're being ethical. If there's concerns, we continue to talk about them, and then we can continue to make an assessment about what the right path is. And ultimately, as I said, I actually think that the ethical concerns could be mitigated or disclosed, but in fairness to both EOLA and the university, I didn't feel like that was right to put them in that situation. So I decided I had to make a choice. I could pick one or the other.
Okay, according to the press release on May 1, 2022, where they announced that you have been selected to serve as interim CEO of EOLA, it also said that HCF, Hawaii Community Foundation, UH and ASU have committed to jointly raising $6.75 million for the operations of EOLA for the first 3 years of the project. The funding allows EOLA to focus on properly implementing programming and creating impact without being burdened by financial stress or constraint. So right off the bat, in this thing saying they're going to raise this money, and UH President David Lasner said, we're excited at this opportunity to collaboratively envision the 21st century of Apua. So it's clearly that the president was initially on the board or something. I don't know why he would be making these statements. And then you're the CEO, and they're committed to raising $6.75 million, and you're saying that there's no conflict?
University did not contribute to the raise.
Yes, but the fact that they committed, it says here, committed jointly, and he collaborates it. What does that lead the public and the perception that there's this conflict?
That's something we certainly can investigate, but I think the ultimate mitigation is I made a choice.
I think ultimately you should have gotten a written opinion, and you should have disclosed it to your colleagues and to the board and chair. Okay, is any other? I have a couple of more.
Yeah, I have a few. Well, I just wanted to go on the defense and Department of Defense contract, 1, 2, 3, 4. David Lasner's, it goes from 8,699,000, 3,450,000, 334. So you said you left and what, Lasner took your place? That's what you're saying? When you resigned, did Lasner take you? I mean, I wasn't there.
For EOLA?
Yeah.
When I left, he was able to fill a board seat. So he took a board seat, yeah.
I'm just kind of confused because, so, anyway, let's get back to,
Can I follow up on
go
that?
ahead, sorry.
I think what you're referring to is, we had a question that was asked to the administration regarding these ARL contracts, and it turns out that the president, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but the president is the principal investigator for 4 major military contracts that's run through ARL. And were you aware?
I wasn't aware until it came out in the House Finance meeting, and then it came up at our last board meeting.
Okay, so is that something that you think is appropriate to be one president, chancellor, chief procurement officer, sitting on the board of EOLA, and now being the principal investigator for 4 major contracts? Is that?
Is the question about the amount of roles he plays, or?
Yeah, role that the president should be playing, and shouldn't that be a concern of the regents?
Well, what some regents opine at the meeting, and I would tend to agree, is that it's a performance issue, like whether, should he do it, I think is more of an issue, less of a conflict issue, and it's more of, are you performing? Is that keeping you from performing?
And what was the result?
Well, there wasn't a vote, but my sense is that there wasn't a concern amongst regents that him playing the the PI role was in the greater good of the university, because, those are significant tasks, right? So maybe the question was raised, can you really do all these things? And the other issue is, well, who's going to do it in the new structure? Are we expecting our president to do all those roles?
But it's not usual that a president would be the PI.
I would
for
agree,
this.
it's not usual.
And the fact is he doing a good job? Well, he didn't know we had those dorms were sitting for 7 years, so does that give us some indication that maybe he's spreading himself too thin?
Possibly.
And again, I don't want to make this about the current president, but this is a question that the regents have to be aware of. What are all of the other things that is going on that you folks are not privy to? And we get privy to it only because it gets brought up to our attention. And like you, I saw it at the House hearing it as well. And of course, there were some allegations that I put the chair up to that, which I had no knowledge
I didn't hear
of
that.
doing that. I get blamed for everything.
I would just like this, like other issues, like sometimes you get it and it's the first time you're hearing of it, and then now it's a body of work to go find out what it actually entails. And I think for this one, we're in that space, Senator, trying to find out, what does that really entail? And what does that mean you oversee, and who do you oversee? And then there's a lot of concern expressed about us housing military research, generally speaking. And so there's been a lot of speaks about that.
Well, it's more so that President Lasner is leaving, yeah, pretty soon. So the concern to a lot of people that was inquiring is this a place where he's gonna have his new employment working for this? I mean, we don't know. I mean, he leaving the university. We're not knowing if he's gonna get hired by these people later on.
Can I respond to that real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I heard other concerns, and so I spoke to President Lasner, and he agreed that we could alleviate those worries. He would be happy to sign something that he would not be taking any employment with the university after he retires, just so that noise isn't out there. That does happen in a lot of places, but that's not his intention, or frankly, I don't think it's his desire, so.
Okay, so another concern that I have so we've been talking about the housing, and then President Lasner said he was Stevie Wonder, he didn't see the buildings falling apart. I don't know why, but anyway, so my question is, you guys approved 156 million for the new housing replacement at the Noah Building housing. My question is, why, after everything was being said, why wasn't it the Hale Moilani a priority? And then the rest of the buildings that is falling apart on the campus, or the buildings falling apart? Because that's a lot of money going towards that direction. And then we keep talking about the student housing and the health and welfare of our students, but what was the region thinking on this process going forward? Because I cannot understand why we're taking that much money and going elsewhere. So maybe you can give me insight.
But I think, this is I understand why housing is a topic of concern because of how long it's been happening, the dollars we're talking about, and it's because it's our students and the conditions they're living in. So, I think they're valid questions. And I think for Atherton and Noah, it's like, well, how do we create housing models that are financially self-sustaining, that we can get built without, with the resources we currently have available, and for targeted populations of students whose needs probably aren't getting met, like grad students in this case. And for both of the projects we're mentioning, it's like we're trying to do it with different partners to find more creative entrepreneurial solutions. I think the current housing inventory wasn't built that way. And so that's why, again, the study is really important for us to understand what are we looking at in terms of what would it take to restore, rehabilitate, make these functional, because it may be that it'd be cheaper to actually take it down and rebuild. So I think to me, that's what we're waiting for. It is going to be a priority. I mean, it's not going to, everyone's watching. I don't know how it would go away. I now get a lot of housing calls, which is great. I have family in this housing. It's not, I care about the condition of the students. But the plan for the facilities that we have right now is awaiting that study.
One more question, a little bit off the, so University of Hawaii has over 400, maybe more than that, acres in West Oahu. When you guys was talking about turf and bleachers and stadium and all that, you guys didn't think to stop, like how everybody talking about Manoa, you guys didn't stop and listen and think that maybe you guys should have built them someplace where you can expand and there's more, facilities that you guys can expand, parking, soccer field, and all that kind of stuff, and try to shove everything in one micro area that you guys don't have the ways to expand on top of that?
What I think is really good about this question is that, as expensive as the Ching field renovations were, and it was a painful decision for me, do we really want to spend money on this? It's even more painful when we know it's temporary, right? It's just interim. The plan is still that Aloha Stadium gets built, and that could be the home of the Rainbow Warriors. I think your question is well taken. We're far away from a stadium plan, and so the university is kind of having to watch how that moves and develops. But alternative sites are certainly,
The reason why I bring that up is because the population and the needs on the west side is not being, when I first got here, they showed me a pie chart on screen. It blew me away on how much, they don't show that anymore because they don't let us know how much Manoa getting over West Oahu, Hilo, up there. So what I'm trying to say is that we already beat that horse. I think it's kind of like the bugger ready for go to the pasture, probably dead already. Manoa is pretty much done in the enrollment because they don't have the population like they do. They don't have the student body. We're talking about one body, so when we're talking about one body's being on campus, it's not there. So when we visit the other campuses, it's the same thing. We're walking over there, we're thinking that we stay at maybe one zombie movie that nobody on campus. I mean, those are the things to me, like I said, I'm not the regent, but that's the kind of stuff out of the box we should think. Grab the reins and hold back and say, you know what? We can't wait for the state to build us our stadium. We should be thinking other things. They're gonna make the stadium smaller. And right now, I don't even see that we have any dollars and cents. So that's something that I think that we should have thought about before dumping all that money in a temporary stadium. Well, I get one question for you. One last one. Oh, sorry, Chair.
I know we're running out of time.
Okay, sorry. It came to my brain. So I said, so what if the region would consider closing UH West Manoa for students, but only close them for athletes, and then rent out the rest of the building for income, and then build up West Oahu? Why would I just close down the University of Manoa? It's outdated. We're spending more money and trying to fix them up, facelift here and there. We have more athletes attending the school than non-athletes. So why don't we change them to an athletic school, take all the resources and take them to West Oahu and build up West Oahu as an educational institute? Something to think about when you guys move forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator.
I have a couple more, and then I'll be done as well. Mauna Kea. You talk a lot about Mauna Kea in your questionnaire. As a board chair, you've appointed a regent. Have you appointed the regent to the long-term transitional group?
Regent Higaki and I are on that committee.
No, you are on the co-management group.
Correct. We have not selected the
long-term
correct.
transition group that requires one board member to be appointed by the board chair. Have you done that?
We have not.
How come? Because I understand since December, they've been asking you to appoint the board member despite being asked time and time again. You've not responded to emails. As a result, Greg Chun has been the placeholder. Is that correct?
I do not recall getting any email requesting that. I have spoken to the authority about that plan. I know they've been focused on getting their director on board, which has happened. We haven't deferred it to Greg Chun.
Well, he's been the de facto
Correct.
placeholder.
He's been, because he's an employee, he's been
Right, but
back and
you're,
forth on the
that's
different
because you
issues.
haven't appointed anybody since December. You know I do my due diligence, right? I'm not going to just bring this question up without knowing.
Sure, although I don't have to agree that I've been communicated with if I don't believe I have been.
But then, okay, but why haven't you appointed anybody since December? You've had that, I mean, you go on and on about Mauna Kea and how much you've been a part of it, how much you've been on the leading it. And here you have the opportunity to appoint someone to this transitional, which I believe when we were on the Big Island, our visit, we questioned you about Mauna Kea. And in fact, we questioned you, which I'm going to ask you next, about the inventory. But before that is why haven't you put in somebody? Because this long-term transitional group, they got to do the transition. They only got 4 years left.
Agreed.
So why are you dragging your
This-
feet on that?
I'm not dragging my feet. There hasn't been a meeting scheduled.
But
so-
why didn't you appoint somebody?
There hasn't been the urgency since there's been no meeting yet.
But
Yeah.
you have a choice of 10 members on your Board of Regents to appoint somebody to this. And if it's so important, you already sit on the co-management group, like you said, with Regent Higaki, but you haven't appointed anybody to the long-term transition group. And they're waiting for that, and maybe that's why they haven't had a meeting.
I don't agree, but I'll call John right when I walk out, and if that's the issue, it'll be resolved.
Yeah,
We
but
can
why-
appoint someone today.
I know, but why do you have to, I mean, that's my concern. Why do you have to
Yeah.
wait? This is your responsibility as chair, and you haven't taken it. So let me go to the next thing then. What happened to the final inventory list? Is it done yet?
I have been pressing the UH to deliver it. My understanding is they did deliver a draft last week. I'll go and confirm that. They continue to have issues with certain components of the inventory, which is why I made the issue that this is not acceptable to hold everything until that's done. Send over what we have and send it over now. If that hasn't been done,
Well, I bring this up because in the November 2023 of this past year, the Senate did a site visit. You all recall we went on that site visit, and you were specifically asked and talked about this inventory list, and you assured the members that it would happen, it would take place, it would get done, it would be done. And here we are, almost March, and we still don't have the final list done. So again, you didn't appoint anybody. We don't have this final list. It's just concerning. And yet you talk a lot about your role with Mauna Kea, so that's why I bring it up. Because you cannot just have the rhetoric and not follow through with what you're supposed to be doing. The other question I have is that Act 55, the Mauna Kea Authority statute states that the Board of Regents, the chair of the Board of Regents or his designee would serve on the Mauna Kea Authority. So Chair Moore appointed Regent Ball. Is there a reason why he didn't appoint you, being from the Big Island, and you being so instrumental, as you so say in your questionnaire, that you weren't appointed to be that individual?
you'd have to ask Regent Moore.
Did you request to be on it?
I did not.
Why?
I have a lot of faith in Regent Ball, and it's a lot of work to do.
Yeah,
And
but that's your island. You're so concerned about the Mauna Kea, as you say, how you stepped up some of the hardest issues and assignments for regions. I chaired the Mauna Kea Permitted Interaction Group, served as board liaison to Mauna Kea. I would think you would want to be on that. Okay, so let me ask you this then. Now that you are the chair and you could sit on it, you did it. You appointed.
Regent Kudo, or
Regent
former
Kudo.
Regent Kudo, yeah.
So again, you could be, because we did say the chair and you could give it, but so why didn't you take it?
I'll repeat, I think there's a lot of work to do. I actually think Regent Kudo brings a lot of skill sets that are required for the transition in particular. I think that's proven to be the case in our meetings in terms of the transition plan. I think it's better to have more bodies and brains and skills and experience than less. He was very involved in Mauna Kea issues while he was a board member, so he has Hawaii Island ties. I think he'd be good for the job.
Okay. Well, I don't have any issue with him being on it, just, I'm just surprised, as much as you went on and on about Mauna Kea and how important it is and how it's your island, that you would want to be the one to serve, so. But I hope that you will go ahead and appoint people, or appoint the person to the transitional committee so that they can do the transition and get it moving and get the inventory done, because that is clearly within your realm at this point as being chair of the regents. Right? Okay, and finally, were you aware of the foundation? Because you sit on the foundation, right?
Yes,
Were you aware that they were paying for club dues, social club dues for some members of the administration?
I was not.
Does that concern you?
I guess it depends. I'd have to see more information about it. But
You didn't
When-
get
whenever-
you didn't
whenever-
get their report to us about who they were paying for?
if I did get it, I didn't see it. But whenever, state employees take, gifts of any sort, it's a concern. So
Yeah, I mean, this is Provost Michael Bruno, $515 a month. Dean Buen Consejo Lum, $515 a month. Dean Vance Rowley, $515 a month. Past Dean Jerris Hedges, $515 a month. And we don't even know about the initiation fees. And this is executives who received social club membership dues in the past 7 years.
I'll have to
So-
take a look at that. I don't know what club it's for or.
This is social club, I think this is Pacific Club. And then the question becomes whether or not it's being reported to the IRS as a benefit. And then how do they decide who gets the club dues and who doesn't?
Just on what you're sharing with me is certainly a concern. that I
This is
don't
the
mind
first
looking
time you
into.
heard of it?
Correct, yes.
We brought it up in one of our hearings, so. Okay, I think that's the questions, but I know we're running out of time. Members, anything else? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time and
Okay.
consideration.
Okay, I'm sorry for our last appointee. Okay. Yes, we're going to take testimony first, Neil, so hold on. So we are on GM 596, submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Regents, the University of Hawaii, Neil Abercrombie, for a term to expire 6/30/2028. And we have testifiers. Let me find my testifying list. Okay, in person, James Forey, testifying for ASUH. Followed by Ernie Wilson. Hi, please proceed.
Aloha mai kako. Oval Kaisan Kainalu James Forey. I'm from Kauai High on the Big Island. Thank you, Chair Kim, and honorable members of the Committee of Higher Education. I'm here today to oppose GM 596 as a senator of the College of Arts and Sciences for ASUH at Manoa. Governor Abercrombie, at several Board of Regents meetings I've attended and testified at, I don't believe his conduct and behavior at these meetings are conducive to a environment in which students feel safe to share their opinions and raise questions and concerns. When we show up at these meetings and testify and try to raise these questions and concerns, instead of being met with somebody who is open and welcoming, we are instead met with somebody who is rather demeaning and meets our concerns with disparaging remarks. And as a result, I don't necessarily believe he's the right person to open up these channel of communications for students at the Board of Regents. And so that's why I oppose the
Thank you very
appointment of Governor Abercrombie.
Ernie Wilson?
Based on Governor Abercrombie's experience as both a governor and serving as a United States Congressman. I think he possesses the understanding and the knowledge of someone who needs to sit on a board, particularly because of his ability and experience in focusing on international affairs and where our place in the world is. So I fully support his appointment.
Thank you. Patrick McCain?
Aloha, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Pat McCain, and I'm here supporting Neil's nomination. You have my written testimony. I would like to say that in years past, Neil did hire Steve Voder, who was the president of the ASUH and worked with us for many years. The issue that I want to touch on is some of the media coverage, I think, was unnecessarily negative. And I was personally offended when they said that you and Neil were enemies, because I remember back in the city council days, Michelle, you were there, and you know, we got along great. And it seemed like it besmirched our public service. And you know, that's why I came today, because I thought if anything, Neil's got a special place in his heart for all of you folks. I thank you for your time, and I thank each and every one of you for your public service.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, because the media tends to always get it wrong, and that they keep,
Trying to turn it into a food fight.
yes, but thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, next is Bronson Kainoa Kiyoshi Azama.
Aloha mai kākou. So yeah, mahalo nui for the opportunity to testify, and thank you for your line of questioning. You know, some of the things that you brought up have been concerns that we've, as students, have had at ASUH. Also echoing some of the student concerns in regards to Governor Abercrombie's behavior, you know, as a regent. It really demeans student voice at times. You know, we asked the same line of questioning actually in regards to the DoD contracts. 3 minutes time to testify, but, you know, got subject to 8 minutes of ridicule from the former governor. So I think those are issues and conducts because, you know, as a student, as people coming from a place where, you know, we're going into debt for our higher education, it takes, and especially when the regents are meeting at times that are often inconvenient to students, we should see an encouragement to student opinion, to student voice in regards to the direction of the university, and not see the ridicule that's been witnessed. And there are professional ways to even ask students questions. The other thing I would note is Governor's most strong comments in regards to Sunshine Law. You know, I've been a youth commissioner as well in the Honolulu Youth Commission for 3 years now, and I've never really had such a big gripe with it. I understand that the public needs time to comment, and his reference to people who would so enforce Sunshine Law as, quote, idiot in one of the meetings, I think is really disheartening, and we should have a regent that is not only empowers students, but also respects the need for public transparency as afforded through the Sunshine Law. And I'll close off with those comments. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Megan Harden?
Aloha, thank you, Chair Kim and Vice Chair Kirani for this opportunity to provide testimony on behalf of Academic Labor United. I'm one of the organizing chairs this semester for ALU. Like Regent Nahale'a, Regent Abercrombie has yet to support graduate students' right to collectively bargain that we are constitutionally entitled to, nor has he given any real demonstrable commitment to ensuring that graduate students have a meaningful voice in the selection of the next university president. And it's for these reasons that we oppose this nomination. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That is all the testimonies we have for people in person. So anyone else wishing to testify, please come forward. Can you?
Yeah, so before I start though, I just wanted to say that I really strongly suggest that you all look at the testimony, whether they came in, you know, on time or late.
Yes, we look at it all.
Okay,
so
okay.
people-
Mahalo. Okay,
Yeah,
so
can you introduce yourself?
So I'm Tara Rojas, and I want to say that, you know, the UH system, UHCC, the BOR decisions affect the well-being of students, faculty, community, and campus community. Knowing that the system wants to be recognized as a native Hawaiian place of learning and missions have been updated, you know, to include with a special commitment to native Hawaiians, it is great concern when a BOR candidate speaks, in a time especially of divesting from militarization and especially from TMT. I checked online and there's 491,590 signatures opposing TMT on Mauna Kea, and 65 people signed this week. Yeah, and so especially divesting from TMT and the right to right the wrongs of this illegal occupation and for all land back. And so to hear this, what I'm going to play, it's just a short clip, is disconcerting, is maddening, and is unjust. So you have to right the wrong. So this is the BOR candidate testifying before U.S. House of Representatives Committee on the Kaka Bill, June 11, 2009.
I'm going to have to caution you, your time is up.
Okay.
We are running very late.
Okay,
so,
just one here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so-
okay.
Get right down to the nitty-gritties of all of this. This has nothing
Okay,
to do with the
I'm gonna have to cut you
Constitution.
off.
This has nothing to do
Excuse
with
me,
the
I'm
race.
gonna have to
This
cut you
has to
off.
do with assets.
Excuse me.
Land and money.
So
And
he's
when
talking
that
about
1.8
the 2 million, the 1.8 millions of the stolen land, and just kind of speaking on it like a joke because it's assets. So he's thinking about assets.
2 million acres of land in Hawaii.
Thank
So-
You got hundreds of millions
Yeah.
of dollars.
So anyhow, so generating money on the backs of stolen, illegally taken land is not befitting of a BOR
Thank you.
candidate.
Appreciate you
Mahalo.
coming by. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify, please?
Aloha, my name is Jazzer Kata. I am from the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and I oppose the appointment of Neil Abercrombie. I stand alone as a student here to really give voice for my fellow students at the university. As elected officials, you represent constituents, and I also represent mine. And I'm scared to be up here and face all the faces. I mean, it's like talking to celebrities, kind of.
No, we were where you were sitting before.
And I hope, we can continue to make great change in Hawaii. My family has struggled, right? Japanese in the plantation, Filipino in the plantation, and my grandmother, my Hawaiian grandmother, always taught me to be pono. And when we have to say this, I say this on behalf of all my fellow students. We do not support Neil being on the Board of Regents. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify? If not, we want to invite the appointee to, yes, it's your turn now. And you're welcome to make opening remarks. Oh, let me just say this. I didn't read off everyone's name in the event of time, but we did have 8 in support and 18 opposed.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for your patience and your courtesy today. I'm pleased to be on this side of the table. I've been on the other side of the table and in the same position as the chair. And I appreciate the previous comment about our relationship. I guess we were talking a little bit in the committee today about conflict of interest. So I think I'd better say on the basis of the 40-plus year relationship that the chair and I have had, that we had no prenuptial political agreements on whether or not we would always agree with one another. I
We
think
haven't always agreed
Yeah.
with each other.
Exactly. So I do appreciate that very much. I just want to, you have my testimony, and I'll certainly stand on that, except to say, it was 65 years ago this September that I arrived at John Rogers Terminal on a Pan American Airways propeller airplane and to take up my graduate teaching assistantship at the University of Hawaii in the sociology department. And so this gives me the opportunity to come full circle in my public career in Hawaii and to be able to give back, particularly where the University of Hawaii is concerned, to what is really literally the foundation of my private life as well as my public service. I just would like to conclude with one correction with respect to the testimony. I really regret that I didn't have an opportunity to speak to Ms. Harden as the chair of the ALU, the social sciences, about the graduate students. I originated decades ago when I was a graduate student and on the board of the first union organization of faculty that took place at the university. I made the petition to the Public Employment Relations Board on behalf of graduate assistants to be involved in collective bargaining. We had contracts, which I think are probably similar today, for 20 hours a week. That was the standard upon which collective bargaining could take place. The argument at the time was, well, you didn't really work 20 hours. And my view is I signed a contract for 20 hours. If management didn't assign me 20 hours, that's on management, not on me. So I can assure you that not only am I in support of it, I'm not sure the rest of the regents are, I'm not sure that the committee is, I'm not sure that the governor is. I know I have been on board for decades now. And and the other thing about the graduate student representation in the presidential search process, the regents have determined that a portion of the regents, 2 regents, would be involved in the selection process of the advisory committee. I'm not one of them. So I'm as meaningfully involved as I can be as a member of the regents as a whole, but I'm not on that selection of the advisory committee.
Okay, thank you. Questions, members? I will start off by saying, you were a regent for just a few months, and yet you voted no on the UH budget.
Yes.
While we had regents that sat on the board for over 4 years. Yes. So why did you vote no on the budget?
For the reasons that you examined at length here today.
So did you feel you didn't have enough time? How much time did they give you folks to look at the budget?
The budget was 311 pages long. I read it all, believe me. And I think the chair knows me well enough to know that I did that. Not 3 cheers for me. It was a necessity. It wasn't long enough. It was for all the reasons. We didn't have an opportunity. I mean, long enough for, yes, you could absorb it if you read it. But I had a myriad of questions, especially because I'm a newbie in that sense, a myriad of questions and observations to make with respect to how these numbers were arrived at or what the priorities were. And in particular, I said then, I mentioned it to more than mentioned it to Governor Green, and I think I've shared with members not only of this committee, but with the public, including speeches that I've given, for example, at a Rotary Club, that I believe that there was a disconnect had taken place between the regents and the administration of the university and the legislature and the governor. It had happened over a period of time and so on, but I felt that my principal task and commitment, if I was named regent, I told this to the governor, if he was willing to consider me, and I also to the Regents Advisory Committee, is to reestablish a cooperative, collaborative relationship with the legislature and with the governor. That's the atmosphere and the context I came out of when I was a graduate student, when I was involved with the first union organization, when I was elected to this legislature in 1974 and had an opportunity to be on the Higher Education Committee, subsequently becoming chair. The relationship between the president and administration, Fudge Matsuda was the president, Harold Masamoto was kind of the chief of staff, the regents, Monty Richards, several of the regents, and the faculty met with the faculty and the regents were very close, working together all the time, collaboratively on behalf of the university. That's what I wanted to. So I voted no because I said I did not believe that my reading of the budget reflected a an ongoing relationship with the legislature, whether it's the stadium or whatever it was. I said, has this been discussed? Has this been talked over with the legislature? Not come and say, well, tell us what to do. Quite the opposite, but that we're mutually required to establish, to fulfill our jurisdiction with respect to the University of Hawaii. And so that was the reason I voted no.
Well, we heard, and you probably heard it as well, we heard that from the chair that the regions didn't really have input into the budget, didn't really formulate the budget. But did you feel that there was enough time for your questions during the budget deliberation before you guys voted?
No, because I think the approach, I shouldn't say my philosophy, but the approach, I want the regions to be much more involved in making decisions in the first place rather than being receptors. I think we should be initiators. And look, I realize that we're volunteers. There's a myriad of departments and colleges and so on. Obviously, we're not going to be able to micromanage, nor does anybody want to do that. But in terms of establishment of policy, as to where we're going and what we're going to do, the regions should be informing the administration as to the direction we want to go, and then asking the professionals that are hired to do that to then feed us the information that we need to be able to share with the governor and the legislature to accomplish the goals of the university. One of the Regent Henning, by the way, I noticed in some of the testimony, Regent Henning is also derided. Regent Henning is one of the most serious and sober and sage-like persons that I've run into. He's an extraordinary
When
human.
you say derided, what do you mean?
That he was making fun of Title IX or being derogatory. I mean, that's the last thing on earth he is. And the reason I bring it up is that he made an observation. Doesn't speak a whole lot, listens, a great listener. When he speaks, but everybody listens. He said at one time, with respect to one of the issues, we don't have a plebiscite. We have representative government. That's what the regents are. We're representing the community. And by the way, the regents are a pretty broad and deep cross-section of individuals' backgrounds and as such. And the legislature is part of our representative form of government. This is not a parliament.
So let me ask you this, Neil.
So that's the reason.
Should the administration have such a control over what is placed on the region's agenda? Because I've heard this before, time and time again, where the chair does not put certain things on, even though regents ask for it, because the administration does not want it on.
I'm afraid no, I shouldn't say I'm afraid you're right. You're right. I think the regents should, I shouldn't say you're right. Your observation to me is, my response is, I think the regents should be setting the agenda and not the administration. The administration should be responding to the initiatives and programs and requests of the regions.
So how do you get that to happen? Because it rests with the leadership. I know you're not on the leadership, but I know we do have one member of second vice chair here, and the first vice chair is not here. We had the chair, but if they're not going to demand that or practice that, then we're going to continue to have the administration running everything.
Well, I think that's in the process of changing. Let me make a case in point. I'm going to speak about Regent Akataki, with whom I'm extraordinarily impressed. She and Vice Regent, Vice Chair Wilson, who I think has the most experience over the longest period of time. We've reorganized the regents entirely. They're brand new committees with brand new relationships, brand new membership orientation and so on. And we're in the process of doing that right now. This is a supplemental budget year. And what I think, I can't speak for all of them, but we operate, we have 11 individuals there, but we operate on a consensus basis. With the new committee organization, for example, the audit committee, that's how we got to the housing situation. That young lady back there is the one who made this happen. I was at the hearing where the president was speaking and so on, and I was disappointed that the administration didn't say, we fell off on this. We were way behind on this. She made it happen. So.
But the administration kind of pushed back, didn't they?
Yeah, but that's what I mean. But the reason I'm saying is we're in the process. The president's leaving. Our attitude, my attitude, and I think the regent's attitude now is we got to get on with the business of picking a new president. Let's get this supplemental budget through and out of the way, and then let's get our relationship with a new president and a new administration and a reorganized Regents, looking at the biennium coming up in the context of all of the other difficulties and challenges that you face, Lahaina, federal money disappearing post pandemic and so on. And let's start this collaboration and coordination activity with a new orientation of the Regents based on a new president and administration, and another legislature to be elected in November, and the present governor actually putting together his first real budget on his own, as opposed to the supplemental budget, which by definition and default came at great measure from previous calculations.
You have been present at a number of legislative hearings and briefings. And
I missed what
you
you
have
said.
been present at a number of the
Yes.
legislative hearings and briefings. You were at the budget briefing, you were at, I think, the Cancer Center briefing and so forth.
Yes.
But we didn't see anybody from your leadership. Is that concerning?
It concerns me, but it points up, I think, part of our dilemma. Part of the testimony that had to do with the Sunshine Law. It's quite true that I have real reservations about our capacity to work together.
But that doesn't speak to the leadership showing up.
No,
right?
what I'm driving at is that the closest we've been able to come to dealing with that question of attending hearings and so on is, could we have a liaison to the legislature? And I informally, I've been asked whether that might be me because of my previous experience and so on. And I said, that isn't going to work. This is going to be very difficult.
Shouldn't it be the chair, though, of the Regents? It's
Oh,
always
well,
been the chair.
I certainly agree that I think we should all be in touch with
Yeah, but
legislators.
somebody has to be the spokesperson and
Yes.
the budget and so forth. And it's been clearly absent. Leadership of the Regents have been absent at any of our legislative hearings and briefings and bills.
Yes.
Unlike before, at least we had somebody here.
Your view of leadership and mine, I dare say, are similar.
Questions, members? Senator Fukunaga.
Thank you.
Thank you. I did look at the testimonies that the students submitted.
Yes.
And I did review a number of some of the video records of some of the recent meetings. And I was wondering if you would, kind of comment in response to the students' testimonies. Because I think we all, have had a long history in really advocating for student voices, democracy, student activism. And those testimonies really do trouble me. I watched a couple of the instances in which some students feel like they're being denigrated. And I'm sure you didn't mean that, but it is quite troubling to hear that the students are the ones who are most strongly opposing, your nomination.
Some students. It always troubles me, as I'm sure it troubles you, if people's feelings get hurt. But when you come to give testimony. And among other things, you make accusations or intimations that people have been associated with possibly just this side of criminal activity, as has been testified to with respect to the research that I was associated with in my congressional work, including when I was chairman of the Air and Land Subcommittee of the Armed Services Committee of the United States. And I will grant you that my response was pretty intense, that my loyalty to and responsibility for the research aspect from the Armed Forces of the United States that is manifest in the National Defense Authorization Act, for which I had responsibility and authority, to see that characterized as authorship or sponsorship or support for terrorism and politically what was characterized as fascism. I've been accused of a lot of things in my life. I've been called just about every name there is to be called for most of my life, but fascist is a new one for me. So, yes, I'm sorry if I regret it if anybody felt offended by the intensity of my response. But on the other hand, when you accuse people of that kind of motivation, I think you ought to be prepared to understand that there's going to be a response.
I think from the student standpoint, I think they tried to be very respectful in their testimonies today. You know, and I think it was more to inform the legislature that they would like, you know, to have a process that also is kind of giving everyone an opportunity to be heard. And in many instances, you know, I think the legislature becomes the arena of last resort. You know, I know Senator Kim and other senators have been through many, many meetings in which, you know, problems and issues have arisen at the legislature, which resulted from individuals who didn't feel like they had an avenue for opportunities to be heard. And so it's kind of like, you know, from that standpoint,
Sure.
I think we sort of really do pride ourselves on that. I guess turning to something perhaps a little bit more positive, you know, on the opportunity for University of Hawaii to actually contribute a lot to the economy of the state of Hawaii. We have also been strong advocates for economic growth and activity. And, you know, we have worked very closely with the university over the last 20 years in spearheading programs, say in technology, could be cybersecurity, and also in creative media, where for many of us, you know, we applauded the University of Hawaii for taking a systems approach in endorsing the Academy for Creative Media at the system level, partly because we understood that we didn't have the resources that many other colleges have. And so I just wanted to ask if you would comment, you know, on the University of Hawaii West Oahu campus, where we recently had, you know, a new media facility open, you know, after many years of hard work and a lot of program development on the neighbor islands and throughout the rest of the community. And if you could comment on, you know, your view of where West Oahu campus might play a role in stimulating a great deal more economic recovery and growth in the West Oahu region.
Well, I would say that as long as you're not undermining the program where the students actually are, which is in the School of Cinematic Arts at Manoa, which has some 300 plus students in it and a faculty, the ACM is a systems creature. It has no academic foundation. The director there essentially is a paymaster to the programs that are actually in the other schools. I've visited and toured the facility out at West Oahu, and I'm, the best of my knowledge, it's essentially empty. The facilities are there, but the cameras are on a shelf. There's no, I guess they have lecturers and so on and so forth. I'm all for it. I mean, I'm for the cinema arts everywhere. We just literally passed the programs for the various other campuses, but all those campuses have to go to the ACM with their begging bowls every year to get money. And I don't know of any other program like that.
In terms of the ACM system programs, the legislature and the University of Hawaii decided to fund it
Yes,
at
I
the
know that.
system level. And as I understand it, many of the programs are doing well, on Maui and Big Island and Kauai.
Okay.
They are also working with a host of
I don't know of any other
departments.
look, I'm trying to.
And so I'm not
Yeah.
trying to disagree
I don't know of
with you.
any other program in the United States. I don't know of any other program, academic program in the University of Hawaii that operates out of the system.
I think the College of Engineering also has a number of programs at all of the various campuses, and they also work with a number of different agencies. So I think the system approach is one that actually makes sense when we're looking to stand up programs throughout the entire UH system.
Well, then I
And we're
presume you'll
really
continue to
looking
fund
at-
it.
Well, we also fund all programs at the system as well as at the campus level, so. I
Oh,
think
good.
many-
I'm all for that.
Okay.
I assure you. So my comment is I'm well aware of it.
Okay.
I think it's severely underutilized and implemented at the moment. I'd be delighted if it could come to full bloom. I would certainly support it. If you're asking me what I feel and want to do as a region, I will support the cinema arts and the creative arts anywhere and everywhere in the system or in the academic programs, wherever they may be. I'm happy to do it. I would, however, like to comment with respect to the facilities which you mentioned out there, that the facilities for the School of Cinema Arts at Manoa is severely in arrears. We need a sound stage there. They're having to split with the theater program right now. We need some facilities.
Governor, I don't want to disagree with you, but, in the past, the legislature did try very hard to establish facilities at the UH Manoa campus. And that initiative was vetoed by the governor. The legislature overrode the veto. We did try to establish a program and facilities at UH Manoa campus. And when that was rejected, we ultimately said, well, we're going to develop additional facilities at the UH West Oahu campus. And that is where the UH has land to be able to also develop other production facilities that can stimulate job creation in the West Oahu region. So I'm not disagreeing with you, but, we sort of passed that milestone with respect to Manoa, and we started there. We would have loved to have been able to develop facilities there. It was just unfortunate timing.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, and luckily, you have a new set of regents now ready to correct that mistake that was made in the past so that we can accommodate the 300-plus students and all of the academic initiative that's now taking place at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. So we'll be able to put a 1-2 punch together, and I'll be happy to work with you on that.
We will definitely look towards creative arts at all campuses to
Wonderful.
benefit all students. Thank you.
You will have a strong ally in me, Senator.
Okay, more questions, members? Any other questions? No other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we are going to go into decision. Call back to order the Committee on Higher Education. We are in decision-making. Members, the recommendation for GM 532 for consideration and confirmation of Lauren Akitaki for a term to expire 6/30/2028 to the Board of Regents. Chair recommends that we advise and consent. Discussion, members? Hearing no discussion, the chair votes aye.
Chair votes aye, Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Fukunaga.
Aye.
Senator Hashimoto.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
Measures adopted, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Members, for GM 597, this is for the confirmation and consideration for Alapaki Nahalea to expire 6/30/28. Let me say that it's not always easy, but the chair has concerns and a number of issues regarding this nominee, and my recommendation would be to not confirm, not advise and consent. Discussion, members. Hearing none, the chair votes aye to not confirm. Oops.
So I means no.
Hold on. Yeah, so it would be.
I means no and no means aye.
Okay, we should fix the form. So discussion, members, we just had the right form. No discussion, chair votes aye.
So I means no and no means aye.
Well, yes, you're voting whether you're going to support the chair's recommendation or
Okay.
not. Okay, so I vote is supporting the no advise and consent.
To advise and consent.
Okay, chair votes aye.
Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Favela.
Oh, aye.
Senator Hashimoto.
Aye.
Senator Fukunaga.
Reservations?
Okay, now on the GM for 596, this is submitting consideration and confirmation Board of Regents for Neil Abercrombie, term to expire 6/30/2028. Chair recommends that we advise and consent. Any discussion? Hearing that, for the votes, chair votes aye.
Chair votes aye, Vice Chair votes no. Senator Favela.
No.
Senator Hashimoto.
Aye.
Senator Fukunaga.
Reservations?
Thank you.
Okay, with 3 ayes, recommendations adopted. Thank you all members, thank you all public for sticking with us through this hour. We are adjourned.